Chapter 725. Beside Maxwell stood an old man with a dignified demeanor. The old man, who used to boast of being a descendant of nobility, was sweating all over his face. He held a cane in one hand, and the veins on the back of his hand, which had age spots, were bulging, showing the nervousness in his heart. "Can we really win? I'm betting everything of my family." "Don't worry. Didn't you see the power of Sir Dessart? He personally promised that Earth will be ruled by the Morgan family in the future. How can you not take any risks?" Maxwell was comforting them verbally, but in fact, he despised them in his heart. These greedy old bastards, pouncing on the slightest benefit like dogs. They were a disgrace to humanity. He looked at Thea, who was fighting with Darkseid at the highest altitude. He wanted to reach that height too. For this goal he could abandon any human honor. "Earth? It has nothing to do with me." His comforting words had almost no effect. Any of the lanterns had the combat power of a superhero. What's more, with the blue lantern present, everyone's lantern rings could be doubled. Against a group of ordinary people, even if they were elites trained by the Morgan family, they were no match for them. The mechanical power armor made by the Morgan family was directly dismantled, and the energy guns were like children's toys in front of the lantern rings. "I'm going to find reinforcements. I'll leave this to you." The old man saw his own armed forces being cut down like wheat and panicked. He wanted to leave Maxwell to buy himself time. Unfortunately, there was a gunshot, and the old man only felt a warm liquid flowing over his old face. After that, he fell to the ground and did not know anything. "Hey, old dog, you're still not honest even when you're about to die." Maxwell put away his gun and pulled down the curtain with a smile on his face. A 3-meter-tall box stood there. He quickly entered the password, and a muscular man with a livid complexion slowly walked out. "Copy the abilities of those people in the sky. Let's use Superman's ability first to show these guys outside the power of Yamojua." Ha 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 ha. Maxwell saw all kinds of 0101 flashing through the eyes of the muscular man. He could not suppress his joy and laughed wantonly. "Let's start with this guy." He instructed Muscle Man to attack Hal Jordan, who was charging the furthest. Before the husky could understand what was going on, it saw a burly figure rushing over at an irresistible speed. "Who are you?" "Esper." He did not show any signs of weakness. He set up a green barrier in front of him. According to his experience, the barrier would wrap around the enemy after blocking them. He had always used this method to win when fighting against countless huge aliens. Unfortunately, this time he met a super ferocious subdemon Joie, who had the legendary ability to impregnate anyone he looked at. No, to learn the opponent's ability with just a glance. He had copied all of Superman's abilities and didn't have any of Superman's weaknesses. He crashed into Hal's shield like a wild boar. The green light lasted for less than half a second before it was destroyed by the huge force. With a crack, it shattered into powder. The Demojua was almost unhindered as it charged straight at Hal Jordan. Now that he had gone through hundreds of battles, Hal was no longer the rookie he used to be. He did not panic in the face of danger. He conjured a giant fist and slammed it on the ground. With the help of the reaction force, he rose up a lot and dodged the Demojua's charge. Before Hal Jordan could rejoice, he heard Carol Ferris shout, "Be careful!" He did not look back foolishly. Instead, he curled his body into a ball in the air and rolled to the left. Chi-Chi, 2 crimson rays hit the place where he was just a moment ago. The rays flew out for a long time before disappearing. Kryptonian? Hal had seen Superman and Fiora with the yellow light. He knew about Kryptonians, but weren't Kryptonians said to be extinct? Now, how many of these 1, 2, 3, and 4 had appeared? The Demojua did not know what he was thinking. With a huge amount of energy in his mouth, he spat out another frost breath at Hal. "Damn it! Big guy, let me show you this." Hal dodged the frost breath. The green light on his ring shone brightly, and a giant emerald sword was created out of thin air. Simulating kryptonite waves was something only a few Green Lanterns could do. It required a strong emotional ability and fine structural ability. The seemingly careless Hal Jordan had specially practiced this move. According to his estimation, it was impossible to simulate it 100%. It should be at least 60% or 70% similar. Just as he was waiting for his opponent to wail and fall to the ground so that he could fly over and brag, he saw the green lightsaber pierce the Demojua's rock-like chest. With a crack, it shattered into powder. The husky was dumbfounded. "You're not a Kryptonian? Who are you?" The Demojua did not care about him at all. He swung his giant arm and punched him. He could not win. Hal Jordan could only retreat. Carol Ferris, who had been paying attention to him, quickly came to his aid. However, the lantern rings always had their limitations. In the eyes of ordinary people, they were extremely powerful, but in the eyes of true masters such as Sia and Diana, they were just SOSO. The number of lantern rings did not affect the final outcome of the battle. The two of them joined forces and exchanged a few blows, but they still could not hold on. The Holy Walker, Qingnu, and Akiro saw the crisis and joined the battle. They relied on the 5 outstanding people in their respective light rings to barely resist the Demojua. Seeing this scene on the display screen behind him, Batman looked at General Ryan with some doubt. "If I'm not mistaken, this is the product of the military's Demojua project. The military had exchanged a lot of data from me, but I remember that the president had ordered to stop the development of the Demojua." Old Ryan was also puzzled. "We stopped when we received the order. The early information was sealed, and the experimental data was destroyed." Even though he said so, he was not confident. The Pentagon was not his alone. All the political figures did not want the military to be monolithic. Various forces were trying their best to interfere. As the Minister of Defense, he was more like a butler, a spokesperson for the military. There were too many people who did not listen to orders and acted on their own. Now, no matter who had secretly developed the Demojua, it was a fact. "Does it have any weaknesses?" Batman looked at the Demojua on the screen. It was like a Superman without any weaknesses. It fought a group of lanterns alone and made them cry for their parents. He asked anxiously. Old Ryan looked at the few assistants beside him. They looked at each other and shook their heads in unison. "The Demojua has no weaknesses. Its artificial cells can imitate the superpower of anyone it sees. It has no original weaknesses. It is invincible." The old man was excited and regretful. It was hard to imagine that these two expressions could appear on a person's face at the same time. Chapter 726. Can't you control it? I've seen some of the data from the experiment. Its commands can be modified remotely, Luthor said leisurely as he shook his bald head. It's now simulating Superman. I remember that it can only simulate one ability at a time. If we modify its encounter module and change it into a weaker state, we might be able to take it down. After all, it's just a robot that runs on programmed logic. It's still far from being invincible. Luthor seemed to find the military's so-called invincible a bit harsh. How dare you call something you've pieced together invincible? Your Master Lu doesn't agree. Leon looked at him with an unfriendly expression. How do you know so much? Speak. How many spies did you plant in the Pentagon? But now wasn't the time to pursue the matter. Everyone was in the same boat. If the boat capsized, no one would survive. Just as they were discussing, Maxwell Lloyd's gaze turned cold as he took out another mother box. With a loud bang, a brand new passageway opened up. Millions of Apocalypse Fiend soldiers appeared directly behind the Human Alliance army, forming a pincer attack. There are enemies behind us. A lieutenant was suddenly attacked. His pistol was torn to pieces before he could take it out. Carl! Ah, you bastards! Return my brother's life. A young man saw the soldiers falling behind him. His eyes were bloodshot as he charged forward. Unfortunately, in front of the huge enemy, he was drowned before he could even make a splash. Command center, requesting backup, requesting backup. All kinds of signals sounded in the command center hall. The situation on the battlefield took a turn for the worse. Many soldiers who were fighting bloody battles were affected. They didn't know the overall situation of the battlefield. Were they defeated? This thought appeared in many people's minds. The originally high morale instantly dropped by half. You two, I need you to stabilize the rear, Batman said sincerely to Gon, then said. The two little blue guardians floated out and joined forces with Planet Mogo to set up a new line of defense. The lanterns also retreated to Mogo's side. With the help of the large blue lantern, they finally stabilized the situation. Thea, who was in the air, saw this scene. The appearance of the Immersing was a bit unexpected. After Moira entered the White House, the Immersing project was stopped. She didn't expect it to be secretly created. This was a masterpiece of Earth's black technology. She was speechless. Copying superpowers with just one look? This was a technological version of the Sharingan. Leave this to me. Let me play with the Dark Lord. You go down and help, Thea told Diana. The war goddess had been holding off Darkseid for half a day, and the second god King Kronos' shield was about to shatter. Diana was drenched in sweat, and she was exhausted. She wanted to argue, but seeing her lover's indisputable look, she could only go down to support the lantern. With Diana's cover, Thea finally completed her new move. With Darkseid's soul fragments and her shadow ability, she created a shadow version of Darkseid right in front of the man's fiery eyes. They were the same height and weight, but the only difference was that the blue fatty was now a black fatty. Your Majesty, what do you think of my new doll? Thea said mockingly as she patted Darkseid's face. Do you want to die? The Dark Lord's voice became colder. Thea snorted. You're talking as if you're going to let me go. Our positions are irreconcilable. There's no possibility of peace. This is just an empty shell. Your little tricks are meaningless except for angering me. Darkseid could tell what was going on with just a glance. Sia had absorbed too few souls, and the shadow Darkseid could not be used for anything other than to scare people. So I'll have to take out more souls. Since you're not willing to give them to me, I'll have to take them myself. Magic and holy swords were too destructive. The battlefield was right below them, and Thea did not want to use those large-scale attacks. Now that she had a better understanding of the divine position of the soul, she wanted to fight Darkseid in close combat. Her hands, which used to be as white as jade, were now covered in a layer of gray mist. This was the divine power of the soul that she had painstakingly absorbed from Lao Zan's divine power. Unlike regular physical attacks, she attacked the enemy's soul, which was too lethal. She usually had to practice it herself, but since the blue fatty was here today, she could use him as a test. Darkseid knew what was good for him. Even though he was stronger than Thea, he was not someone who could be defeated in a few moves. He finally became serious. However, he was on high alert. He still looked at Darkseid from the corner of his eyes. What was the use of this thing? He believed that his vision was much better than Sia's, but the Dark Lord was still confused because he couldn't see the use of this. He could shatter it with a single punch. Spending so much effort and relying on Diana to stall for time was useless no matter how he looked at it. Thea soon revealed the answer. Darkseid flew into the Apocalypse Demon army like a marionette. Wah! The Apocalypse Demon minions were in an uproar. They ran all over the place, afraid that they would be killed if they took a wrong step. Several battlefields where the Apocalypse Demons had the upper hand immediately collapsed, and the allied army began to attack. Thea was very cunning. Wherever the situation was dangerous, she would control Darkseid to rush there. The fear of the Dark Monarch was deeply rooted in the hearts of the soldiers. Even if Darkseid was a weakling that could be easily defeated with a few slashes, the fear that had persisted for so long made them not dare to do so. 3 battlefields where the Apocalypse Demons had the upper hand were all destroyed. The allied army did not know where this dark fatty came from or why he was helping them, but they still knew how to beat the enemy when they were down. Darkseid's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets when he saw this. He was so proud of himself. Proud my asterisks. Are my subordinates all pigs? Can't you see that this is fake? When he saw Darkseid causing trouble for the Great Plains Wolf, he was right. In the eyes of the Dark Lord, this was just a troublemaker at best. However, the result was shocking. The Great Plains Wolf turned around and ran like an idiot. Superman chased after him. Darkseid was speechless. It was understandable that a normal soldier could not see through this, but how could a Great Plains Wolf not see through this fake? Thea would not explain to him. This was not a matter of strength but of politics. The Great Plains Wolf was the embodiment of political correctness in the Apocalypse Star. The old Great Plains Wolf was a perfect example of this. Darkseid was obviously thinking the wrong way. His focus had always been on the divine power of the God Seat. Thea did not waste any more time. She started attacking with lines. Chapter 727. This guy was really strong. The two had only exchanged a single blow, but Thea already felt as if her fingers were grabbing onto steel. Darkseid's arm was thicker than her waist, and she could feel a faint murderous aura from his counterattack. This guy's mastery of soul power was really deep. Thea instantly understood that Darkseid also wanted to get his hands on the soul godhood. Unfortunately, she had taken it first, and all his preparations had gone to waste. The conflict between the two was even more irreconcilable. Thea used her small size to grab his wrist with her left hand and his arm with her right. She activated her soul power and extracted another strand of Darkseid's soul. The price she had to pay was a backhanded slap from the Dark Lord. Thea looked at the soul in her hand and threw it to the fatty in the distance. She wiped the golden blood from the corner of her mouth and said, "Your Majesty, your doppelganger is not strong enough. Why don't you summon more from your main body? You will definitely fall here today. Haha, let's try again." Thea began to attack crazily without caring about the consumption of her divine power. Darkseid was not used to this kind of crazy fighting style and was a little embarrassed for a while. However, the Dark Lord was finally annoyed after being caught twice. "Do you think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my might?" The Dark Lord was finally serious. Even though it was only a doppelganger, it quickly turned the tables and forced Thea to retreat. At this moment, Diana, who had returned to the surface, had already exchanged blows with the inferior demon Joie. She had replaced the lanterns and guardians while simultaneously facing the tide of miscellaneous soldiers and inferior demon Joie. The two guardians couldn't take it anymore. Now that the inferior demon Joie was blocked by Diana, they were only facing some miscellaneous soldiers. Even if the other party's numbers were several hundred times greater than theirs, it was still enough to deal with them. Yemo Joie and Diana exchanged more than 10 blows. It could see that Diana was a close-range fighter, so it cancelled its imitation of Superman and switched to the lantern's fighting style. At this time, Yemo Joie was imitating Mogo from the baby planet. It was wantonly squandering its emotions like the ocean. Diana could not get close to it even after using all her skills. "Batman, hurry up. Thea won't be able to hold on for long." Valkyrie's two treasured swords danced up and down. Unfortunately, Yemo Joie's AI was very high. Even if he didn't fight her head-on, she wouldn't be able to do anything for a while. "We're working hard." Batman quickly hung up. His plan was to hand over the rear to the lanterns with outstanding combat power to intercept, gather the enemy's main force in the front, and then turn around to attack the enemy behind. On the western battlefield, Green Arrow in his power armor was covered in blood. What was the principle of not killing? To hell with it. Oliver, who was obsessed with his sister, wanted nothing more than to rush up and chop that blue fatty to death. These little soldiers couldn't contain his anger at all. The Hercules on the north side and the Sea King on the south side also began to exert their strength. The Hercules' giant axe and the Sea King's trident gathered a large amount of energy from time to time and unleashed it on the enemy. Only the Firestorm on the east side was a little weak. Even if the two scholars combined, they were not considered warriors. They fought hesitantly, but under Batman's strict orders, they finally began to attack fiercely. Faced with the essence of the Allied army, even the Apocalypse demons, who had the advantage in numbers, began to retreat. As for retreating to the other side of the sonic boom tunnel, they did not dare to do so. They could only firmly guard the tunnel entrance. Nearly 5 million of the 25 million enemies had been killed by the Allied army. Now, less than 20 million were still holding on, and this number was decreasing by the minute. Without a commander or a core figure holding the fort, it was only a matter of time before they were all wiped out. Diana dealt with the enemy in front of her while looking at the sky. After exchanging a few blows with Darkseid, she knew that the Dark Lord was far stronger than her. When she saw Thea trying her best to deal with him, her heart almost jumped out of her chest. "This bunch of trash from Earth, are we fighting so hard for ourselves?" She looked at Maxvier Loudy in the distance with fire in her eyes. He was still waving at her in high spirits. She tried to rush over and kill this treacherous person several times, but she was firmly stopped by Yemo Joie. Ordinary people could not get close to Maxvier. The Apocalypse Star had used a device to increase his mind control. The closer he was, the stronger his mind control was. In a small area, only a few people were immune to his mind control except for Diana. Maxvier firmly guarded the sonic boom tunnel, and countless apocalypse demons flew out of it every second. The lanterns had already joined forces and were desperately trying to stop them. Even the two guardians, Ganseed, were on the front line. Mogo would occasionally send out a beam of light to help clear the area. More than 1,000 lanterns were fighting against 1,000,000 apocalypse demons. They used all their strength to barely hold the line. However, there were more and more enemies, and their lantern rings needed to be recharged. Bearing so much emotional energy was also a heavy burden on their minds. Even with the blue lanterns recovering their minds and the green lanterns healing their injuries, it was inevitable that they would lose members. 2 yellow lanterns and 1 green lantern were emotionally exhausted and drowned by the enemies. Diana tried to break through Yamojwa's blockade several times, but unfortunately, her movements had been calculated by the AI hundreds of times. She racked her brains but still could not kill her way out. Just as she was about to lose her patience, she heard a muffled boom. A motorcycle with 20-foot-long tires broke through the wall and stopped in front of Diana. "Wow, Wonder Lady. My arms have always been open for you. I can give you hugs and hot kisses too." The crazy clown girl still had her hair in 2 ponytails. She rushed to the scene on a Batmobile. The motorcycle stopped in front of Diana and even blew her a kiss. This person was one of the few people who was not afraid of mind control. "Next time we have to be good friends, best friends." The clown girl acted like they were close friends and wanted to pat Diana's shoulder, but the Valkyrie hurriedly dodged. The clown girl did not have any self-awareness and did not realize that there was still a battle going on. She watched as Diana swung her sword and hacked at Yamojwa, who was also retaliating with a large number of blue lights. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, the clown girl seemed to be very depressed. She turned to look at Yamojwa. "Blockhead, you should smile more. This is medical advice." After saying that, she took out a bomb with a clown pattern on it and threw it over with a whoosh. Yamojwa hurriedly used materialization to block it. With a bang, there was no gunpowder at all as he imagined. Instead, colorful paper pieces flew all over the ground. That's right. These were the colorful paper fireworks used during weddings. Who knew what the clown girl was doing with these things for no reason? Yamojwa, who was hazy and had already gained some self-awareness, was instantly attracted. These things looked pretty good. Seeing that it was effective, the clown girl did not know if it was because she remembered Batman's request for her to pull it away, or because she simply felt that it was fun. She took out a bucket of spray ribbons and sprayed them at Yamojwa for a long time. Finally, she took out a spray can and drew a smiley face on Yamojwa's ashen chest. Chapter 728. Feeling that the mission was almost complete, the ugly girl rode the motorcycle and sped away. As she ran, she took out her submachine gun and fired another shot at Yamojwa. Yamojwa's attention was completely attracted. It felt that this spray was very interesting. Unfortunately, the black technology that developed it was too high-end. The so-called simulation was all focused on superpowers. What spray ribbon? Sorry, I didn't design it at all. I didn't even think about it. Ignoring Diana, it stayed in place for 2 seconds and realized that it couldn't simulate this thing. Yamojwa had a vague sense of desire. It spread its legs and chased after her. As for why it chased after her, it didn't know either. After running for 2 steps, it realized the problem. Yamojwa could only use the abilities of one person at a time. Even if this person had many abilities, it could still simulate it. Now, it was running the simulation of Blue Lamp Mogo. As the planet's consciousness, Mogo didn't have legs. Yamojwa's AI directly rejected the revolution, which was the legendary round-rolling method. Instead, it chose to use its 2 legs to chase after the ugly girl. In the end, it definitely couldn't catch up. Could only continue to switch modes. Yamojwa stayed in place for a second. The data in its eyes ran quickly. Then it suddenly bent its knees and flew out like a cannonball. Its left arm was in front and its right arm was bent. Other than the fact that it didn't have a cape, it was the standard flying style of Superman. "Wow! You're so enthusiastic." The ugly girl laughed very happily. She stepped on the gas pedal to the max. Unfortunately, the distance between them was still rapidly closing. A yellow lightning flashed past, and the old acquaintance, the Flash, continued to carry her in his arms and run wildly. Yamojwa stayed in place for 2 seconds. Then, yellow lightning surrounded its body. It chased after her with a speed that wasn't inferior to Barry's. Barry looked back and almost fell down. This guy also has the power of God's speed? However, he felt that it was somewhat specious. He didn't dare to let his guard down. He remembered Batman's instructions and lured this guy as far away as possible. Barry also used the power of Godspeed to wrap around the ugly girl and let her enter a world where time was relatively still. This allowed her to retain the ability to move while she was running. After all, the mission of mocking Yamoj was still required this guy. Barry's role was just to run errands. Flash quick. Speed up, haha. The clown girl looked at the yellow lightning around her as if she had found a good toy. She threw some random things behind her from time to time and patted Barry's shoulder to make him speed up. The Flash was very embarrassed at this time. Batman gave him this task. At that time he thought it was quite simple. Now it seems that this is a trap. The enemy was actually able to imitate his abilities. How could this be described as awesome? Unable to move his hands while hugging the clown girl, his speed was reduced by at least 20%. It was only due to the opponent's seemingly real speed that he wasn't able to catch up. In addition, the guy she was hugging was too dishonest. A pair of long bare legs swayed in front of his eyes. Later on, he threw away most of the things on his body. When there was nothing left, he threw away a pair of shoes. The fair feet and firm, round thighs swayed in front of his eyes. The hot-blooded youth, Barry Allen, felt some parts of his body become hot. He dared to swear to all the gods that the fairy he was hugging had distracted at least a third of his attention. The clown girl felt bored after lying down for a while. She crooked her mouth and frowned, wanting to find some fun to relieve her boredom. Coincidentally, she saw Barry's serious big face. A devilish smile appeared on the clown girl's mouth. Oh, what are you doing? Barry was running while hugging her. Suddenly, he felt the weight in his hands gathering. He saw the clown girl's head was down and her legs were up. She was doing a standard handstand on his palm. As an elite in the gymnastics world who was one step away from participating in the Olympic Games, the clown girl's body was much more flexible and balanced than the average person. However, Barry Allen didn't have the mood to care about that at this time. It was because he seemed to have seen something indescribable. Amanda didn't prepare underwear for the prisoners. The crazy clown girl didn't have that awareness either. With this handstand, the already loose tank top fell down to her neck. Time seemed to have frozen. What are you looking at? The clown girl's face popped out from under the clothes and questioned him sternly. When Barry's eyes couldn't stop moving, she changed into a smile. Her legs clamped onto Barry's neck and she jumped up with strength from her waist and abdomen. She rode on his face. I can't see the way. Barry was quick-witted. He wouldn't say that his face touched an indescribable part. He hurriedly found an excuse. Oh. The clown girl was very obedient. She held onto his shoulders and turned 180 degrees. Now she was riding on Barry's neck. Although the clown girl's two legs were still swaying in front of his eyes, at least it was better than messing around like before. Alamojua was approaching rapidly. Barry, who had freed his hands, was finally able to run in a standard posture. Little Flash, run. Blockhead, chase after us if you have the ability. Diana looked at the three of them running further and further away in a strange manner. Their unique crazy laughter could be heard in the wind. She didn't waste any more time. Her two swords kept slashing at the approaching soldiers. She had to close the sonic tunnel behind her. Seeing that Alamojua was lured away, Maxwell Lauder foresaw his failure. However, he knew that he couldn't run away. He still sat firmly on the chair that was specially made to magnify the effect of the mind control. Goddess? You aren't gods at all. All of this was caused by you. Do you think I don't know? It's that guy in the sky who attracted. Unfortunately, before he could finish his complaints, and before he could even elaborate on his grand ambitions, Diana grabbed his chin and pressed it against his head. With a twist of her arms, Diana broke his neck with a crack. The mind control that he was so proud of, the skillful battle techniques, and the profound scheming were all useless in the face of absolute power. Diana spat at the corpse. How dare you talk about my lover in front of me? I thought your neck was hard. She didn't even have time to look at the corpse. She slashed the mother box with her sword and hurried to the sky battlefield. Miss Thea wasn't in a good situation at the moment, But she wasn't completely powerless either. After grabbing Darkseid twice in a row, Darkseid had become more cunning. A large amount of divine power of massacre surrounded his body, and this kind of divine power had a great effect on his nature. Sia felt uncomfortable all over after taking a whiff, and it took her 2 full breaths to recover. "Are you all right?" Diana, who was like a firefighter, returned to her lover's side. She took out her shield again and infused it with guardian god power. The cracked shield glowed again. "Ha, of course I'm fine. You should ask our Dark King if he's fine." Miss Thea was very confident now. She was flattering herself by saying that they had a 50-50 chance of winning. However, Darkseid's advantage wasn't that obvious. Miss Thea didn't care about the consumption of god power, so Darkseid was in a passive position. He didn't know that Thea had a humanoid source of god power, Shazan, who could continuously absorb Zeus Great's god power. He didn't want to waste too much god power on Earth. After all, the Heavenly Father was his eternal enemy, and most Thea was worth paying attention to. Chapter 729. The Dark Lord's thoughts were simple. Even if he lost this time, as long as he could exhaust more of Thea's divine power, he would be able to win the next time they fought. Thea might not be as strong as the Heavenly Father, but she was still worthy of his attention. This was the embodiment of her strength. With such thoughts in mind, one of them recklessly squandered his divine power in an extremely unrestrained manner, while the other was extremely cautious and did not want to expend too much of his divine power in an extremely conservative manner. The scene actually seemed to be somewhat of a draw. "You're an incredible expert." Darkseid was a man of few words. He was a man of few words. But she isn't. The great Lord of Darkness turned to look at Diana. His eyes were scarlet, and a power that seemed to transcend the concepts of time and space erupted from his eyes. "Your Majesty, are you confused?" Thea was puzzled. "Do you have amnesia?" Although Darkseid's Omega Ray was suffocatingly powerful, she could still block it with some divine power. Her eyes flashed green and 2 rays of light shot out. She knew that the Dark Lord was using a feint. It looked scary, but it was just a superficial power. What is he trying to do? Thinking of bluffing, Sia hurriedly looked to the other side. She saw the Dark Monarch cross the distance in a single step and grab the dark-skinned fatty who was causing trouble in the Apocalypse Fiend. Darkseid sneered at Sia. "You are worthy of my schemes." His tone was the same as usual, as if he was explaining something. Darkseid exerted a little force and crushed the fatty. The soul fragment was like a drop of water falling into the sea as it fused into his body. Something seems to be in my body." Darkseid immediately realized that something was wrong. "Haha. I said you were stupid and you were really stupid. With such a big brain, I really have to hand it to you. You even dare to absorb the soul that I've tampered with." Thea laughed heartily. She could easily win an Oscar for her acting skills. She aimed her left hand at Darkseid and clenched it into a fist when she sensed the special power in his body. Darkseid's body emitted a large amount of black smoke. The Dark Lord reacted quickly. He had the divine seed of darkness, and he hurriedly used the divine power of darkness that was somewhat related to his soul to suppress the black smoke. Unfortunately, Thea also had her own understanding of darkness. What she understood from the Shadow of Origin was naturally of a higher level than the God of Darkness. Instead of suppressing Darkseid's divine power, it seemed to be adding fuel to the fire. Ordinary people might not be able to hear it, but the deities heard it loud and clear. Boom! There was a dull thud as Darkseid exploded from his soul to his body. 2 drops of black, almost transparent divine blood splattered on the ground, forming 2 3-meter-wide craters. Black smoke billowed from the craters. It contained both Darkseid's dark divine power and the strange energy Thea had learned from the Shadow of the First. Whether it was the Apocalypse demons or the human army around the crater, they were all vaporized and disappeared completely. "Oh, your Majesty is very decisive. You were able to force out all my hidden cards in such a short time. That's amazing." Thea nodded in praise, but there was a tinge of regret in her voice. Everything had happened so suddenly, but Darkseid had still been able to make the most advantageous choice. His calmness was commendable. At the cost of some light injuries, Darkseid had wiped out all the hidden cards that Thea had been scheming against him since the beginning of the battle. He could be said to be wise and heroic. Both sides were back to square one, but one soul was slightly injured. while the other's divine power was greatly depleted. Everyone, get out of this battlefield. Thea's eyes were getting brighter and brighter. It was obvious that she was about to unleash her ultimate move. Diana hurriedly ordered the human army below to leave. No one in the modern world was stupid. 2 drops of blood had turned the ground into a crater. Not to mention this kind of black blood that fell from the sky, they would not be able to withstand the aftershock of a normal attack. They did not even have the chance to cheer, so how could they not get out of the way? The allied human army quickly retreated. The apocalypse demons didn't want to get involved in this mess either. Under the pretext of chasing after the enemy, they cleared an area of about 10 miles in the center of the battlefield for the big bosses to have fun with. Thea shouted, and an endless stream of soul power emerged from her body. First it was a river, then a lake, and finally an ocean. It was an ocean formed by souls. Countless souls cruised in the ocean, their blurry faces indicating the difference between them and the living. They wailed, complained, and were dissatisfied. All kinds of negative emotions were expressed to the world and to the living. There were also countless shadow creatures among the souls. Some souls were even mixed with shadows. Even Thea did not know what they were. What the F***ck? Darkseid was finally angry. Are you still trying to get your hands on the divine seat of darkness? Darkseid was already pissed that the soul deity's seat had been taken by someone else. Now Thea was trying to take his deity's seat with such an aggressive attitude? This was simply unbearable. Does your heavenly father know that you're trying to get your hands on the power of darkness? Actually, Thea had no choice. She had seen the shadow of Primordial many times, and all she had learned was something like corrosion and darkness. Ferocious beasts were definitely able to create light from the shadows. She was just a small fry. With the guidance of the divine seat of darkness, the characteristics she absorbed were all inclined towards darkness. Since her talent points were already in the wrong direction, she might as well continue in the wrong direction. She waved her hand, and the Sea of Souls slowly began to move. Eventually, it gathered all the energy and rushed toward Darkseid like a boundless river. This was a new technique that Thea had developed by imitating the river Styx. It did not require the filtering ability of the river Styx. Instead, it relied on the power of the soul to wash away the enemy. Even if Darkseid was a huge mountain, she would still crush it. Without hinting with her eyes, Diana leaped into the air above the Sea of Souls and took out a golden spear. This was a divine weapon made from old Shazan's lightning staff. There was still a gap between it and the original Zeus lightning spear in Hera's hands. However, the 2 girls did not mind. No matter how powerful a divine weapon was, it depended on the user. Diana continued to pour divine power into the spear. She persevered and protected her guardian. Let's go together. Thea saw that the Sea of Souls had taken shape. She jumped onto the only rock on the surface of the sea and controlled the water. Diana also turned into a golden lightning and rushed toward Darkseid with the help of the Sea of Souls. 2 juniors. Darkseid said with contempt, but he was actually going all out. He reached out with both hands to meet the Sea of Souls and the lightning. He was the first to obtain the divine position of strength, and he was also the most familiar with it. He wanted to use his strength to subdue the 2 girls. The giant fist and the golden lightning came into contact first. Darkseid did not pay much attention to Diana. He could see through the Valkyrie's true power at a glance. He was confident that he could take her on. However, he could not see through Thea. Most of his divine power was in his right hand, and he could easily take on Diana's attack with his left hand. However, when he punched into the sea, he felt something strange. Souls did not have a physical body. Even an ordinary person on Earth could think of this, let alone him. The Dark Lord was very proud of his own power. He believed that his understanding of power was higher than Thea's understanding of the soul. This was not wrong, but he did not know that Thea had also learned some things beyond the laws of nature from the Shadow of Origin. These things could not be explained clearly, and could even be explained as unreasonable. No matter how deep your understanding of power is, it is useless. I have surpassed the laws of nature. I will not reason with you. Chapter 730. Darkseid's punch missed. Thea manipulated her Sea of Souls to avoid his attack. The surging waves gathered enough power to sweep Darkseid up. Darkseid's right fist missed and he staggered. Diana, who was on his left, could not hold him back either. She and Thea were connected mentally. and the Sea of Souls was dragging him along with the golden lightning. The two goddesses pushed and pulled Darkseid, who was as huge as a mountain, into the Sea of Souls. The wailing souls were vaporized the moment they came into contact with Darkseid, but there were too many of them. Thea mixed a large portion of wealth divine power into the Sea of Souls. Even Darkseid was confused. He almost thought that there was treasure at the bottom of the sea twice, and he almost lowered his head to fish for it. Fortunately, the Lord of Darkness was not an ordinary god, and he quickly regained his senses. He felt that he had been tricked, and he attacked the Sea of Souls to vent his anger. Diana turned back into her human form. She took off the silver bracelet of protection and shouted. She grabbed Darkseid's neck and tried to push him into the sea. Thea was also controlling the waves on the other side. She turned them into several tentacles and grabbed Darkseid's limbs to pull him into the sea. Only half of his body was in the water, and he felt uncomfortable all over. Naturally, Darkseid resisted, and the two ladies were in a stalemate. No matter how hard the Lord of Darkness struggled, he had lost the upper hand. He was in the Sea of Souls, and he was constantly harassed and attacked by the souls. He could not get out in a short time. Thea did not hesitate. She turned into a gray river and rushed into the sky with him. That was the battlefield she had set up. There were still many moves waiting for the Lord of Darkness to experiment with. Seeing this, the Great Plains wolf who was dealing with Superman, could a duck egg be stuffed into his mouth? His boss was not going to lose, was he? The giant axe that was tightly swung revealed an obvious flaw, which was caught by Superman. Superman was also very anxious. They had not taken down this monster for so long, and countless human soldiers were dying every second. This made him feel like he was committing a crime. Luckily, the Wasteland Wolf didn't know what he was thinking, or else it would have scolded him for being a small monster. His whole family were small monsters. Both of their attacking methods were similar, and both of them advocated attacking. Originally, they were evenly matched, but now that the Great Plains Wolf was slightly distracted, it was immediately caught by Superman. Relying on his invulnerability, Superman grabbed the Wasteland Wolf's hand that was holding the axe and punched him in the face. The Wasteland Wolf had been through hundreds of battles and was very experienced in dealing with such situations. He reached out to grab the giant sword behind him. He wanted to teach the reckless Superman an unforgettable lesson. However, he caught nothing but air. Suddenly, he remembered that his giant sword had been taken away by Thea last time. He didn't have a sword with him today. Clang! There was an earth-shaking sound, and the Great Plains Wolf's face took a solid punch. Blood mixed with a few teeth sprayed all over the ground. Fortunately, he was experienced and managed to injure Superman with a backhand blow. A 20-centimeter cut appeared on the blue tights. A little blood flowed out, but it quickly healed. Damn Kryptonian! Superman's martial arts were still not as good as the Wasteland Wolf's, but he relied on this healing power that was stronger than the gods to make the Wasteland Wolf feel like a mouse trying to pull a turtle. Unfortunately, he still had to fight. Although he was worried about the overall situation, he still had to persevere. The result was regrettable. He wanted to dawdle, but Superman couldn't wait any longer. Every wail on the ground could be heard in his ears. At least more than 100,000 people had died in the human coalition army. Batman's plan of first gathering the essence to annihilate the enemy's main force, and then turning around to clean up the rear was not very agreeable to him. Instead of annihilating the enemy, it was better to repel the enemy. But now, not only were the Lanterns fighting a bloody battle, but even Batman himself had joined the ranks of the army with the remaining personnel in the command center. Lex Luthor and Amanda Waller had joined the battle with pistols just to buy time for the main force in front. Superman couldn't say anything. Thea and Diana were fighting the fiercest of the enemies in the distance, and he couldn't help them at the moment. The Flash was carrying the clown girl in a strange posture, followed by a giant man. They didn't seem to be in danger. After dealing with the Wasteland Wolf in front of him, he would join the human forces and end the war as soon as possible. His mission was very important. Superman, who was full of honor, told himself so. After making up his mind, he began to fight the Wasteland Wolf without caring about the damage. 2 punches for an axe, 1 kick for a punch, and injury for injury. Superman began to fight a war of attrition with the Wasteland Wolf. Facing Superman's serious eyes, The wasteland wolf complained in his heart. Superman didn't have any divine power. Not at all. But this extremely strong physical attack power also made him suffer. The originally majestic armor looked like it was picked up from the garbage dump, and his body was damaged in many places. The wasteland wolf could only constantly use his divine power to repair his body. In less than 2 minutes, his divine power was reduced by a third. Without a human-shaped battery to charge, the deity position was only a pitiful deity position of hatred. He had to recuperate for decades to recover his divine power. Now it was consumed by Superman, who was a fool in his eyes. He was in such a miserable state, and Superman wasn't feeling any better. The wasteland wolf's axe was called the Axe of Heaven and Earth. The name was a little Chinibu, but its power was not to be underestimated. Superman had been hit 6 or 7 times by the axe, and one of the axes almost broke his ribs. His blue tights had become like strips of cloth, and his red cloak had 3 holes. The wasteland wolf relied on his powerful recovery ability as a Kryptonian to survive, and Superman didn't kill him. According to the wasteland wolf's estimation, the enemy should have been scared away by his crazy attacks. But why wasn't the guy with the axe running away? Superman had supervision, and the wasteland wolf was also alert. If he had encountered a madman like Superman in the past, he would have retreated if he couldn't win. After living for tens of thousands of years, he cared about his life very much. But now he didn't dare to run away. How could he run away? In the distant sky, Darkseid finally stopped pretending to be a man of few words. The Dark Lord and Thea were now fighting fiercely. One used the power of darkness while the other used the power of the soul. Dark clouds rolled in the distant sky and black gas raged. Seductive singing could be heard faintly, and Diana's lightning and the Dark Lord's Omega rays could be seen intermittently. What if he ran away while his boss was fighting? What would happen to him? The wasteland wolf didn't dare to imagine that scene. As for defecting to the Heavenly Father's side, that was even more ridiculous. He had a feud with the Heavenly Father for killing his wife. If he defected, he would die even faster. Attack? Seemed like he couldn't win. Run away? He couldn't run away now. The wasteland wolf had no choice. He wanted to stall for time, but Superman was attacking like a madman. At that moment, the wasteland wolf felt exhausted. Chapter 731. Superman could not figure out why his enemy was fighting to the death. He could not see through wasteland wolf's predicament with his knowledge and experience. An experienced Martian hunter would definitely have noticed something, but unfortunately Clark, who grew up on a farm, did not have this kind of life experience. He could only think that his enemy was cruel and could not be communicated with. He sighed in his heart. For the sake of humanity, I have to kill you. In the underworld, Superman was able to fight Darkseid to a draw. He had not reached that level yet, but his potential was limitless. Superman, who had made up his mind, did not hold back anymore. His attacks, which were already fierce, sped up. Ouch! If you don't give me a way out, I'll make you suffer too. The wasteland wolf was a petty person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Now that he was forced to the edge of the cliff, his ferocious nature was stimulated. He swung his axe like a windmill, aiming for Superman's vital points. Both of them gave up on defense and began to fight without caring about themselves. Superman's attacks were powerful and heavy, while Wasteland Wolf relied on his rich experience and tricky moves. The intensity of their battle increased exponentially. After parrying his enemy's arm, Superman grabbed Wasteland Wolf's shoulder and kneed his chin. While Wasteland Wolf was looking up, 2 heat rays were fired at Wasteland Wolf's face. The feeling of being burned by a star's energy was not pleasant. Even though the Wasteland Wolf had tried his best to dodge, one of his eyes was still blinded, and the other was badly mutilated. He was also a ruthless person. He sent Superman flying with an elbow strike, and after using his divine power to repair his eye, he wiped the blood off his face, raised his axe, and used all his strength to chop Superman. Boom! There was an explosion. With Superman as the center, the ground within a kilometer of him cracked. A huge crater more than 100 meters wide and more than 10 meters deep formed in the center. Huff huff. Wasteland Wolf panted heavily. It was a rare occasion for him to squander his divine power like this. Superman, who had suffered a heavy blow, spat out mouthfuls of blood and knelt on the ground. However, his recovery ability was amazing. He stood up again in 2 breaths as if the kneeling man was someone else. F***ck. Wasteland Wolf was about to curse out loud. No one could beat the other to death. How could they have fun like this? If he knew that Superman was consuming the energy of stars, which could be replenished by simply absorbing it, and that he needed to accumulate his divine power for hundreds of years, he would be even more desperate. As the overall divine power decreased, the divine powers buffs to the body gradually decreased. In battle, the Great Plains Wolf's overall attributes began to decrease. He was already a little unable to beat Superman. On this side, the Wasteland Wolf was getting more and more nervous. On the other side, his little friend Desard was having a good time fighting the Martian Hunter. The Martian Hunter's fire phobia was still tormenting him. Although he had not reached the point where he would faint at the sight of fire, he was still affected. This was a mental illness that had accumulated over hundreds of years, and it was not easy to recover from. Martians, be obedient and become my experiment material. I will transform you into the greatest weapon. Desard was aware of his opponent's weakness. He did not use any dark or ice spells. His fire spells were not as flashy as Thea's, but they were still at the pinnacle of the standard that ordinary magicians could only dream of. Using fire spells directly did not cause much actual damage. Most of the magic damage was resisted by Desard's psionic power. He began to use some continuous spells. If he did not burn the target to death, he would disgust the target to death. At this moment, the Martian Hunter was like a torch. Orange flames, light green demonic flames, and yellowish sulfur flames were all burning on its body. He could only use his psionic power to extinguish the flames. As he continued to fight, the gap in his psionic power began to widen. The Great Warlock did not fight him in close combat. He only cast spells from afar. He wanted to capture the Martian Hunter alive. Originally, everything was going according to plan. As long as he was given time, he would be able to take down the Martian Hunter without sustaining any injuries. However, Thea and Diana had swept away Darkseid. The scene of the gray sea sweeping across the sky made him lose focus. He did not understand why the invincible monarch in his heart looked so pitiful. After much difficulty, the battle-hardened Martian Hunter finally saw a flaw in the enemy's defense. He no longer cared about the various flames that were still burning on his body and pounced toward the Great Warlock. Under the Great Warlock's astonished gaze, a sharp sword formed from the purest spiritual force pierced into his chest. Smelly blood splattered in the air. The Great Warlock hurriedly ignited several types of flames on the Martian Hunter, and used the impact of the explosion to distance himself. When he used his divine power to repair his body, he felt the psionic power. If I feel that you are injured, then you must be injured. Divine power could not quickly eliminate this kind of idealistic power. The universe was vast. The Great Warlock had naturally studied psionic power. In his research, psionic power was a very inert ability. However, he had never seen psionic power at the level of the Martian Hunter. This was the first time he had seen psionic power that could affect the new gods. If the Wasteland Wolf who led the army was a general, then Desrad, who was in charge of all government affairs, was equivalent to the Prime Minister of the Apocalypse Star. Seeing that Darkseid had been swept away, he forced the Martian Hunter to retreat and hurriedly turned to look. Things had not reached the point of no return. Darkseid was still attacking. Even though the Dark Lord was a little angry, he was still far from being defeated. This made Desrad feel more at ease. If his master was really killed, he would not be any better off as an old dog. Unlike the Wasteland Wolf, he knew that he could not defeat Thea with a single glance. Whether it was divine power, spells, or realm, Thea could crush him in all aspects. When he looked at his old companion, the Wasteland Wolf, he could not help but twitch his mouth. This fellow was beaten too badly. The Great Warlock was speechless. Even Darkseid's doppelganger had been dispatched. He had originally thought that this would be a one-sided victory. He and the rest should have been able to win the battle while singing songs. How did it end up like this? The resistance of this universe was too strong. If their goal was to conquer this universe, they would have sent more troops. They did not need too many, just another 10 million troops and a new god, and Earth would not be able to withstand them. However, he did not dare to say this. The Heavenly Father was still watching from the other side. If they lost the Apocalypse Star in order to conquer Earth, Disrad felt that Darkseid would eat him alive. There was no other way. So be it. Let's continue fighting. Seeing how the Wasteland Wolf was so loyal to his master that he would not hesitate to put his life on the line, Disrad could no longer leisurely play with the Martian hunter. Shadows burned, flames roared, and shadow energy accompanied the flames. He started to focus his magic power on the Martian hunter. It did not matter whether he could win or not. It was always right to put up a brave front and fight to the death. Without the messy fire spells, the Martian hunter finally recovered. He used his soul power to the maximum and attacked without showing any signs of weakness. While casting spells wildly, Disrad rejoiced a little. Compared to the density of Thea's shadow energy, his spells were a little shameful. Fortunately, they had gone to the side to play. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing to show off in front of an expert. Chapter 732. The battle in the sky was extremely intense, and the battle on the ground was also in a stalemate. The killing speed of the Human Alliance army was still sharp, but the enemies were constantly flying out of the tunnel. The advancement of the battle line was seriously delayed, and most of the melee fighters were injured. The long-range ammunition was also reduced to a very dangerous level. Batman stood on Hal's lantern ring and panted heavily, looking at the battle situation while thinking of countermeasures. Thea and Diana were fighting all the way to the horizon. Dark clouds were rolling and black fog filled the air. It was impossible to tell who was winning and who was losing. In the remaining battles, Superman obviously had the advantage, and the Martian hunter was barely tied. The main forces of the human race also had the advantage, but it would still take some time to wipe out the enemy. The rest was the rear. Thanks to Diana breaking the mother box, the Flash and Clown Girl luring Yamojua away, even if there were only 1,000 lanterns, they could still barely hold off the millions of Apocalypse Planet soldiers. Now, the only one who was still energetic and shouting on the front line was Violent Wolf Rob. The Lantern's endurance was really worrying. They could only fight for 3 minutes. If it weren't for the 2 little blue men and the planet above, the line of defense would have been broken through long ago. At this point, they had to use their trump card. Before the battle, Thea and Batman had a deep talk. They could be considered mobile troops or seeds, but they couldn't put all the resistance on Earth at once. Most of the ordinary superheroes like Kara, the Green Arrow team, Batman's team, the Flash team, and most of the ordinary superheroes stayed on Earth. Batman also agreed with this point. Now that the situation was critical, they had to use some of them. He crushed the teleportation gem that he had already prepared, and 4 people appeared on the battlefield. Swamp Monster, you and Animal Man will join the battle below and replace Hal Jordan. Nightwing, you and Princess Starfire will replace Green Arrow on the western battlefield. Hal put me down. You will leave the battle line and pull Green Arrow on the western battlefield to help Superman first, Batman ordered. Hal Jordan's so-called greatest Green Lantern was just a little stronger than ordinary lanterns in Batman's eyes. However, he was not very useful in such a big battle. There were 1,000 lanterns, and one more or one less would not make much of a difference. If he joined the battle between Superman and the Wasteland Wolf, then he would be the last straw that broke the camel's back. Not to mention, with Green Arrow and Superman who already had the upper hand, they could completely crush the enemy. Hal immediately accepted the order to provide support. His empty spot was filled by Swamp Monster and animal hero Buddy Baker. On the other side, Green Arrow Oliver was even more anxious than him. After giving a few words to Nightwing and Spark, he controlled the power armor to fly into the air and took out the pseudo-divine longbow made by Diana. He knocked the specially enchanted armor-piercing arrows and shot 2 arrows at the Wasteland Wolves. Green Arrow's martial arts attainment was much higher than Superman's. What he aimed at were the openings that the Wasteland Wolf would reveal in the next second. The Wasteland Wolf, who was struggling, dodged the first arrow, but he hesitated for a moment for the second arrow. If he continued to dodge, then he would not be able to dodge Superman's fist. Might as well take 1 arrow. He thought that the arrows of the people on Earth were just SOSO. They were completely incomparable to Superman's casserole-sized fist. However, he underestimated Oliver. The first arrow was just a normal enchanted arrow. Even if he was hit, it would not be a big deal. However, He used a special arrow made by Thea for the second arrow. Thea added a trace of soul power to the arrowhead. The rest of the arrows were all magic arrows. This one was definitely a divine arrow. The wasteland wolf did not notice and was pierced by the arrow in the ribs. This arrow is quite sharp. It can pierce through my armor? The wasteland wolf was numb from Superman's attacks. He reflexively wanted to pull out the arrow and use his divine power to repair his body. However, when he pulled out the arrow, he realized that something was wrong. Why did he suddenly become so weak? In low-intensity battles, he could wield his axe and fight for a month without feeling tired. But now he felt more tired than if he had fought for a month. His eyes were a little blurry, and he could only see two shadows. The axe that used to be like an extension of his arm now felt incomparably heavy. He had been tricked. He relied on his intuition to dodge two of Superman's punches. He hurriedly checked his wound. It was a shocking sight. There was a grayish-white hole in the skin below his ribs. He tried to use his divine power to heal the wound several times, but it was blocked by a strange divine power. Furthermore, there were fragments of his soul flowing out of the hole. This was the reason why he was so weak. Darkseid was very proficient in the path of the soul. Even though Thea had taken away his divine position, he was not afraid of soul attacks. The wasteland wolf did not have this ability. He tried several methods, but none of them could stop his soul from flowing out. Although he was a god and his soul was thousands of times stronger than an ordinary person's, he could not withstand this constant flow. On the other side, Hal Jordan arrived at the same time. He thought that he would be a savior in this battle, but reality gave him a solid blow. First, he was beaten up by Isuamojua, who had mastered black technology. Then, he joined the mission to stop the million-strong Apocalypse Demon army like an ordinary Green Lantern. This kind of terrible battle did not reflect his greatness as the greatest Green Lantern. I'm not happy. Hal Jordan saw that the wasteland wolf was a little dazed. He did not hold back at all and conjured a large green hand to grab him. He did not know that the wasteland wolf was competing with the divine power in his body. Seeing that his opponent did not dodge, Hal Jordan became even angrier. You're looking down on me too. The large green hand grabbed the wasteland wolf and squeezed. Knowing that he had broken the taboo of battle by being distracted, the wasteland wolf did not care about the flow of his soul and struggled with all his might. If he was at his peak, Hal Jordan would not be able to trap him. Unfortunately, half of his divine power had been worn away by Superman, and he was hit by an arrow. He was not prepared and could not break free. In the next second, Oliver shot two more arrows. The wasteland wolf gritted his teeth in hatred, but he was not sure if these arrows were normal magic arrows or divine arrows. He could only tilt his head to avoid them. Naturally, he was hit in the face by Superman's heat ray. Faced with the siege of 3 people, he could not hold on anymore. Although he was embarrassed, he still chose to call for his personal guards to help. Thousands of elite Apocalypse demons were ready to join the battle. The warriors of the new god race were not incompetent either. Both sides had been fighting for tens of thousands of years, and their tricks could be seen at a glance. Hold them back. The mages of the new god race, under the command of the blonde Becca, collectively set up a fiery red curtain of flames between the wasteland wolf and the ground troops. Occasionally there would be a few who rushed over, but they were shot to death by the green arrows like sparrows. Desard, come and help me. The wasteland wolf and the great warlock, 2 gods, one civil and one martial. No one would believe that they lived in harmony on the Apocalypse Star and had brotherly love. But the wasteland wolf was in too much danger, so he could only lower his head and ask for help from his old rival. Chapter 733. Can't you see that I'm busy too? The great warlock was bitter. He was stronger than the Martian hunter, but if he didn't have the weakness of being afraid of fire, he would only be slightly stronger. The Martian hunter's abilities were too well-rounded. He couldn't be taken down in a short time, but Desard couldn't leave him in the lurch. If the Great Plains wolf escaped, he would be the next to be besieged. Damn it! He could only curse silently. He sent Hal Jordan flying with a shadow burn from a long distance, allowing the Great Plains wolf to escape. The price was a slash from the Martian hunter's mind blade. His left hand was almost chopped off, and he had to use his divine power to repair it. Seeing that Hal Jordan wanted to attack the Great Warlock, Superman, who had a higher reputation, pointed at the Great Plains Wolf and said, "Continue attacking him." The Great Plains Wolf wanted to cry for the first time. "You're bullying me because I'm a close combat god, right?" Superman's judgment could be said to be very wise. Compared to the Wasteland Wolf who was reckless with an axe, Desard was indeed much more slippery. He used all kinds of flash, shadow stealth and mirror image. Even if there were many people surrounding him, he could still last for a long time while running around. The Great Plains Wolf didn't have this advantage. Hal could become the leader of the Green Light Corps in the future. If he got rid of his arrogance, he wouldn't be lacking in insight. Olivier was chosen as the successor by the Ninja Master. He was only slightly inferior to Batman in all aspects, but he was also good at seeing the big picture. He fully utilized his martial arts advantage and made up for the flaws in Superman's attacks. Every arrow hit the Great Plains Wolf's fatal spot. Superman focused on offense and defense. Green Light used all kinds of instantiations to control the Great Plains Wolf's movements. Green Arrow waited for the opportunity to find the enemy's flaws and create a good opportunity for her comrades to deal heavy damage to the enemy. The three of them worked together for the first time, and the effect was unexpectedly strong. In just 2 minutes, the Great Plains Wolf was hit by 2 arrows. One of them was a normal armor-piercing arrow, and the other was a soul arrow. Its body was like a broken bucket, and its soul kept leaking out. Felt like a slow death. The Great Plains Wolf couldn't stay calm anymore. He took 2 punches from Superman and rushed out of the encirclement. He raised his axe and wanted to chop Green Arrow. The armor on Green Arrow's body was modified by Thea using the body of the cheetah deity. When it ran, it was really fast. With a whoosh, it disappeared from sight. The Great Plains Wolf chased for 2 miles and knew it couldn't catch up. "Turn around and go after Hal Jordan. Let me kill at least one of them." However, Green Lantern was a space patrol officer, flying back and forth across the entire universe, so his speed was not slow. Turning back took some time and Superman caught up with him again. Ouch! The Wasteland Wolf wanted to howl at the sky. There was no way to fight this battle. It was extremely awkward. Run. His boss was still fighting, so he didn't dare to run. Fight? There were 3 of them against 1 and they couldn't win. Defeat them one by one? However, they all ran away like rabbits. Since I was destined to be unlucky, I had to drag someone down with me. The Great Plains Wolf thought of his good brother, Desard, as a scapegoat. "Since you're not going to help me, I'll look for you instead." He waved his big axe so hard that water couldn't splash through it. He wanted to drag these guys to Desard's side and gather the power of 2 new gods to fight 4 enemies. His goal was not hard to guess. Superman didn't want to add more variables, so he ignored the opponent's sharp axe and led the attack. Lunatic. The Great Plains Wolf had seen many people and killed many. He had seen too many cornered beasts put up a desperate fight, but those people all fought with their lives on the premise that there was no hope. It was indeed the first time he saw someone like Superman who was playing with his life even though he had the upper hand. The axe hit Superman's collarbone. The blue battle suit had long become a beggar's outfit. The blade of the axe cut deeply into Superman's shoulder. Even the body of steel couldn't block the edge of the top divine weapon. Superman clamped the axe with his muscles. His facial muscles were a little twisted. "Do you know why you lost? You were not united." What the hell is unity? The Great Plains Wolf didn't understand the meaning of this sentence. He felt a piercing pain in his back, as if an invisible blade had pierced through him from the front to the back. Someone ambushed him from behind? The 3 guys who had been chasing him were all in his sight. Were they Desard's match? How was he going to explain to Darkseid that the Great Warlock had just watched him get attacked? Before he could think, Superman hit him in the face with a headbutt. The force of the blow was so strong that the Great Plains Wolf's consciousness went into a daze. Everything in front of him was blurry. There were sounds of explosions, flames burning, and the sound of something breaking through the air. This should have been caused by his first opponent, Superman's fist. The Great Plains Wolf felt like a long time had passed, but it also felt like only a moment had passed. His consciousness finally returned to his body. Why did it hurt so much? The Great Plains Wolf immediately checked his body. The situation wasn't looking good. His left arm was broken at the elbow, and there was an arrow in his abdomen and shoulder near his neck. He then looked at the battlefield. The guys who had surrounded him were all there. There was also a tall, burly guy with green skin who was staring at him. The focus of the gaze seemed to be behind him. It was common sense not to turn back during a fight, but it wasn't an iron rule. The Great Plains wolf turned back to take a look. The first thing he saw was the great warlock, Desard. This god of pain had always been dressed like a sadist. Now, half of his evil-looking red robe was torn, revealing his dry skin. His body emitted a foul stench, and there was a faint smell of blood. It was obvious that the great warlock had come to save him. Seeing that the Great Plains wolf was about to die, he fully utilized the friendship characteristic of the Apocalypse Star. That was to use the Great Plains wolf's large body as a shield to fight for time with the heroes. Did he save him? Yes. The effect of the rescue was obvious from the Great Plains wolf's severed left arm and the arrows in his body. The Great Plains wolf pulled out the arrows and regrown his left arm. He growled to his companions, "I have less than half of my divine power left." Actually, it wasn't just half, he only had a little more than 30% left. However, he didn't dare to tell Desard the truth. The unity and friendship of the Apocalypse Star wasn't just for show. He had to prevent the Great Warlock from attacking him after the battle. The Great Warlock's condition wasn't much better than his. At this moment, the two new gods were looking at the four heroes with their backs against each other. It's hard to imagine that he recovered faster than us. Desard's concern was naturally Superman. The Martian hunter's condition wasn't good. Green Light's energy was also below the warning line. The green arrow was just a normal person and wasn't in their eyes. What should we do next? The Great Plains wolf held his axe with both hands and looked at the enemies nervously. In such a stalemate, he hoped that the resourceful Desard could come up with a good idea. The Great Warlock's face was full of bitterness. The battle situation could be described as rotten. In the past, the boss would take the lead and kill his way out, leaving him and the Great Plains wolf to clear the battlefield. When had they ever fought such a troublesome battle? Could the boss win? He couldn't help but look into the distance. Chapter 734. Could Darkseid win? He had no doubts when he first arrived on Earth, but it was hard to say now. Darkseid was unaware of his subordinates' expectations. He was currently roaming in Thea's Sea of Souls. He hated the heavens and the earth for not having a handle. He had the power to destroy the world, but unfortunately, he couldn't use it in the Sea of Souls. Thea's Sea of Souls seemed to be empty, and Darkseid's power seemed to be hitting the air. He wanted to pierce through the water, while Thea wanted to pull him down. In the end, neither of them could do anything to the other. The Dark Lord was embarrassed. Thea's motive was obvious. She wanted to stall for time, but he had to take it. The power of origin kept hitting the Sea of Souls. Thea could only empty 3 or 4 times out of 10, and she had to use her divine soul power to endure the rest of the attacks. She was uncomfortable. Rise, people of the Sea of Souls. Thea stood on the only reef in the sea, her golden hair fluttering in the wind. At first, she didn't notice it. But just now, she accidentally sensed that a new life had been born in her Sea of Souls. A grayish-white gas slowly emerged from the water. It was much more solid than the souls in the sea, and it had more layers. As soon as it emerged from the water, its eyes kept looking around. It was obvious that it had high intelligence. As if to please Thea, the Lord of Souls, its appearance gradually became feminine. Its hair and curves were slowly taking shape. It could now be called she. Thea looked at this new life that had grown in her Sea of Souls and was amazed. This new life's every move was full of charm. She only needed to say one word, and it was like the most beautiful melody in the world. With the divine soul power as the main body, and the allure of the wealth divine seat and the beautiful singing of the literature divine seat, this new life had all the characteristics of Thea's divine power. Siren is your name. From now on, you will be the leader of the Banshees. This Banshee was quite powerful. She was a demigod the moment she was born. However, she had almost no ability to fight head-on. All she could do was hide at the bottom of the sea and sing songs to mess with Darkseid. Come on, come to me and have a good time. The Banshee seemed to want to show off her abilities in front of her creator. Her murmurs drifted into Darkseid's ears. The Lord of Darkness was not easily bewitched. But he could not resist her nagging. There were no absolutes in this world. Constant harassment would always yield results. Darkseid let his guard down for the 100th time when he heard the voice calling out to him. Good chance. The long-legged goddess flew up and circled Darkseid's neck twice with the mantra lasso. She then jumped behind him and tried to pull him down with all her might. Thea cooperated well with her. Darkseid's feet were in the Sea of Souls. She controlled the turbulent seawater and pushed Darkseid to the other side. Unprepared, the Dark Lord was caught by the neck, and his body leaned back slightly. Thea's forceful push made him lose his footing. His soul sea was constantly washing over him, severely hindering his ability to fly. Darkseid's giant body fell straight into the sea. Quick! Diana said anxiously. She did not even have time to retract the mantra lasso. Thea did not need Diana's instructions. She activated the formation she had prepared beforehand. She must have planned to bring Darkseid to this battlefield. She had set up a magnificent ceiling formation here. Ordinary ones were completely useless. She referenced the design of Naboo on Earth to suppress the shadow of darkness, and added many precious materials to create a cage that could be called a divine artifact. Crack! After a few cracking sounds, Darkseid, who was struggling to get up, felt his arms, thighs, and waist being shackled by something. That was not the end of it. The seawater quickly solidified and held him in place like a few large pliers. He was a young god after all. How could something like this possibly restrain the god of strength? Darkseid began to exert his strength. He could no longer wait to see the two goddesses' dejected expressions. But when he exerted his strength, he realized that something was wrong. Something seemed to be sucking away his divine power. This isn't metal? He lowered his head and looked at the huge metal lock on his waist. It looked like a silvery white metal, but it was actually made up of countless tiny units. Every unit here was absorbing his divine power continuously. The nanomachines were absorbing his divine power? Planet Revelation's technology was far more advanced than Earth's. Darkseid did not care for the power of science, but he was not illiterate. He could recognize nanomachines, but the nanomachines were not simple. The thing that was absorbing his divine power seemed to be some kind of special cell inside the nanomachines. Darkseid was relieved that Thea was not the one absorbing his divine power. Unfortunately, he had used his divine power twice in a row and destroyed countless nanomachines on a microscopic level. Unfortunately, his body was still tightly bound. These were the cells that Thea had extracted from the man in the jacket in Central City. The man had been able to absorb Barry's power of speed, so it was not difficult for him to use them to absorb divine power. The only drawback was that they did not have much storage capacity. Milady duplicated countless cells and added them to the B-Girl's nanomachines. She then used magic to communicate with them. After combining her abilities, dark technology, and magic, they became the lock that was imprisoning Darkseid. However, she also knew that the lock would not last long. Compared to the number of nanomachines, Darkseid's divine power could be described as endless. Die! Die! The two goddesses roared at the same time. Thea did not dare to use her holy sword in the Sea of Souls, so Diana threw her one of the two swords. They flew up at the same time, their eyes filled with determination. Like two shooting stars, the two swords stabbed into Darkseid's eyes at the same time. The Dark Lord's screams echoed throughout the battlefield. The soldiers fell into chaos, and the two generals were at a loss. This did not sound like a declaration of victory. Their boss was beaten up so badly. Too bad these are not the eyes of the main body. Otherwise, they would be more valuable for research. Thea kicked Darkseid's face and pulled the sword out. She looked at the bloodstains on it and said with a little dissatisfaction. Diana threw the sword to her, and Thea put the two swords away. The Omega effect had been stained on the swords, so she had to go back and study them carefully. The Omega effect was the source of Darkseid's power, and it was also what he relied on to dominate the multiverse. It was of a higher level than divine power, so it could not be repaired with divine power. Now that his eyes, which represented the external manifestation of the Omega effect, were destroyed and he was tied up like a dumpling, the Dark Lord felt a little gloomy. It seemed that he was going to lose this battle. Chapter 735. Do you regret it? Are you afraid? Are you fearful? You're not invincible, right? You've always known that. That's why you've been pretending to be invincible. Thea put on the yellow light ring for the first time. She amplified her fear and channeled it into the great Dark Lord's heart. Her muttering was extremely soft. It blew into Darkseid's heart like a gust of wind. She was right. He was not invincible. He had always known that. Who are you afraid of? You won't be able to catch up to that person even today, right? Perhaps he's the true ruler of the universe, and you're just a pitiful worm. What's his name again? Thea's voice was even softer now, but Darkseid could hear every word clearly. You won't know. You're so young. How could you know him? Darkseid encouraged himself. He was still struggling against his fear. What a terrifying new god. He's the most powerful of the new gods. So what if you work hard for your entire life? You'll have to run the moment you see his back, right? You really have a good father. The devil's muttering finally reached the most crucial point. Don't mention him. I order you to stop. Ah! The great Dark Lord's psychological defenses were broken. He spat out a mouthful of black blood. The blood contained countless drops of divine power essence. Thea did not hold back. She collected a portion of it with a wave of her hand, and the rest fell into the sea. Even if it was a clone, the nature of the divine power was the same as the main body. She would take it back to study what the Omega effect was. Since the other party did not stop her, she would not continue talking. Mentioning Kanyoja's name in the new world? She was not that stupid. Rise! 8 dark golden chains flew out of her sea of souls. These were Hades' collection. They were originally used to restrain their father, the second-generation god King Kronos. Now Thea had brought them over. She did not care if they were suitable for her. With a few cracks, Darkseid was bound tightly from the neck down. At the same time, 3 more banshees were born in the Sea of Souls. They were far weaker than the sirens, so they could only join in the fun. Thea finally had the time to look at the sea and the sky. Although she was the one who created the sea, she couldn't take it back because of Darkseid's interference. At this moment, other than the new god race warriors who had returned to the reincarnation pool, most of the souls of the dead on the battlefield had entered their soul realms. Of the 3 banshees that had been reborn, one of them had been a Green Lantern, while the other 2 were very interesting. They were actually a mixture of the souls of the Apocalypse demons. The Apocalypse demon and the others came from planets that Darkseid had conquered. They were either resistance fighters or important leaders, but they were eventually captured and modified. The strength of their souls was not low, but because of the cruel mechanical modification, their souls had become muddle-headed. Now that they were free from the shackles of their bodies, they finally regained a trace of their original nature. The 2 banshees formed by the souls of the Apocalypse demons let out a soundless roar. They wanted to grab Darkseid and bite him, but they didn't dare to do so. Thea didn't have such a problem. Now that the enemy was restrained, when was the best time to strike? She ignited 2 balls of soul fire in her hands and pressed them against Darkseid's blinded eye sockets. On the other hand, the Valkyrie was even more ruthless. She stabbed the lightning spear into the wound on Darkseid's abdomen, but it was as if she had stabbed a rock. Diana shouted and poured her accumulated divine power into the spear. She even stirred the spear twice in Darkseid's abdomen. Ah, damn you! Darkseid was furious. Being injured by 2 bugs was a humiliation to him. His body swelled up twice as much as before, and the energy-absorbing nanomachines exploded one after another. The dark gold chains that followed behind were also torn apart. You're pretty loud. Let's see if you have what it takes. Sia was extremely busy. She sent out 7 or 8 balls of soul fire, which burned fiercely on Darkseid's body. Darkseid's dark face looked a little pale in the grayish-white flames. Diana was slightly weaker than her, but she still managed to pierce 2 holes in Darkseid's body with her spear. Her golden divine power kept ramming into Darkseid's body. After another half a minute, Darkseid's divine power was completely disrupted, and he could only take the beating. Room! An orange tunnel opened with a loud bang. Darkseid was finally ready to retreat. The goddess of wealth wouldn't let him escape so easily. She had used up at least a third of Hades' collection to set up all kinds of traps. Darkseid, you have to leave something for me. The several people gods who saw this scene in the distance were overjoyed. Superman and the others felt that victory was in sight, while Wasteland Wolf and the Great Warlock felt that, thank God, boss, you're finally retreating. There's nothing to say. Let's run too. Although they had made up their minds to retreat, they couldn't just run away. They had to use a strategy. The two brothers saw Darkseid's predicament at the same time. Their boss seemed to be in a terrible state. They looked at each other and understood what each other meant. The outcome of the battle was obvious, but they had to save their boss's clone. The two gods attacked at the same time and forced the four heroes to retreat. They shouted something like, "Don't you dare hurt my master," and the Great Plains Wolf of Mount Chong is here, as they attacked Thea. Of course, they were just putting on an act. Using one's comrades as a shield was a characteristic of the Apocalypse Star. They didn't think that Darkseid, the boss of the Apocalypse Star, had any good qualities. After all, their boss was a clone and they were the main body. If they died, they wouldn't be able to revive until thousands of years later. Although the two gods shouted loudly, they pretended to be dizzy and had cramps as soon as they entered the Sea of Souls. Even Thea was shocked. My ultimate move isn't that strong, right? You two are the best among the new gods, but you two are weak after touching my soul? Your acting is a little too exaggerated. Your Majesty, hold on a little longer. The Great Plains Wolf was paddling with his axe like a paddle. On the other side, the Great Warlock was very curious. He secretly scooped a small bucket of water from the Sea of Souls and wanted to take it back to study it. Thea didn't have time to pay attention to their little tricks. She ignored them and continued attacking Darkseid. However, the Great Dark Lord was determined to leave. She had used up all her trump cards and couldn't do anything about it. He would be a hooligan if he came looking for trouble next time. Darkseid was a man of character. Even though he was blind, his empty eye socket still looked coldly in Thea's direction before he entered the tunnel. Then he left without looking back. Their boss didn't say anything and left quietly. The Great Plains Wolf and Disara didn't have the guts to do so either. The two gods quickly followed him into the tunnel. Chapter 736. Thea was so tired that she was about to faint. She did not have the energy to continue the chase. Diana, on the other hand, stabbed the Great Plains Wolf in the end. She had avenged Wonder Woman from Earth too. Diana supported Thea as they flew out of the Sea of Souls. Superman and the other heroes watched from the outside. They did not have any divinity, so they could not enter this place. Facing Superman's expectant gaze, Diana shouted, "We've won!" Her voice reverberated throughout the land. When the Great Dark Lord retreated, all intelligent beings could sense it. The heaviness in their hearts disappeared. Even the slowest person knew what this meant. We've won! Long live the humans! Long live freedom! Long live Atlantis! The allied army of different races cheered. The battle between the bosses had ended. Their battle was over. There were less than 10 million soldiers left on the Revelation planet, and they all retreated through the Sonic Boom Tunnel. The allied army chased for a while before stopping their attacks. The entire battlefield fell silent, and many soldiers collapsed to the ground. Some kissed the ground, rejoicing that they had survived, while others cried because their comrades had died. More than 100 banshees were born in the Sea of Souls. Although each batch was not as good as the last, they were still stronger than ordinary people. They were immune to physical attacks and could charm souls with their songs. Any one of them could become a second-rate villain on Earth. "Thea, are you all right?" The person who was anxious was naturally her brother Oliver. "I'm fine. I'm just a little tired." She was not pretending. She was indeed about to faint. Her body was exhausted, her mind was drained, and her divine power was almost depleted. She looked back at the Sea of Souls and sighed. This Sea of Souls had used up 30% of her divine power. It was a pity that Diana's and Darkseid's divine power were mixed together. She could no longer retract it. The few of them landed on the ground and looked back at the battlefield in the distance that was shrouded in black gas and gray fog. The heroes were a little speechless. Thea's soul sea was previously colorless and transparent, but now it was completely black and looked very evil. This is all Darkseid's doing. Milady had no sense of shame at all as she blamed the Dark Lord. The rest of them nodded in agreement. This was very much in line with mainstream values. They automatically assumed that the golden lightning in the dark clouds was Thea, and the black fog that seemed to cover the sky was naturally Darkseid. Justice is so small, but evil is so powerful. This thought appeared in their minds, and they were even more determined to fight against evil. Although the heroes were very tired, they could not rest. The Flash still needed help. Clown Girl rode Barry around the new world for more than 10 laps. When Thea and the others flew over, she was almost asleep. Although Uemojua was very powerful, he could only simulate one ability at a time. A group of people besieged him, but he was quickly tied up by Diana. Batman rushed over and rewrote the main program. This bomb that the Earthlings had developed finally calmed down. Treating the wounded and cleaning the battlefield did not require the help of the heroes. However, as the representative of the White House, Thea still received an initial damage report. A mothership was shot down. At the critical moment, Superman flew over to save it. The loss of personnel was not too great. The other 4 motherships were slightly damaged. 19 of the giant mechas were completely destroyed. None of the pilots survived, and the remaining mechas were damaged to varying degrees. 150,000 human soldiers were killed, and more than 700,000 were injured. 70,000 Atlanteans were killed, and 31 Amazons were killed. The Taurans and Death Knights were also injured to varying degrees. The Lantern Unit, which was the rear army of 1 million enemies, was also badly damaged. 4 Green Lanterns were killed, and 7 Yellow Lanterns and Blue Lanterns were sacrificed. They're all warriors. Thea patted Diana's shoulder. The Valkyrie half knelt on the ground. The 31 people in front of her were all her sisters. 2 of them were even Hippolyte's guards. They had watched her grow up. Let's bury them on Paradise Island later. We still have to return to the new star of creation. The battle on Heavenly Father's side is even more intense. We have to pay him a visit. Sia's voice was extremely soft. Becca, she called out. Commander. The blonde Becca was covered in wounds. When she saw Thea, she hurriedly bowed and greeted her. Her commander was a god who could defeat Darkseid's avatar. Becca had to respect her. I know that everyone has suffered heavy casualties, but we need to go back to the new planet immediately. The battle on Father's side is very intense. She was not lying. The war on Apocalypse Star was about to break out at the same time. If the Heavenly Father's side was defeated, it would be pointless for her to defeat 2 of his avatars. Sia had already offended Darkseid, so she had to go and take a look. The new Protoss warriors were excited when they learned that they had become the decisive force. They ignored their injuries and said that they would die on the charge. Thea and Diana each left a fragile avatar behind to deal with matters. They led the new Protoss army back to the new planet through the sonic tunnel. The new creation planet, which was usually quiet and indifferent, was now like a lively market. Countless people were running around. Some were passing on messages, some were helping the seriously injured to retreat, and even more were holding the bodies of their loved ones and wailing in pain. Anna, you're back. Aunt Eliza, how's the battle going? Everyone asked their friends about the current situation. Thea looked over. The situation on the battlefield was clear at a glance. Her brows gradually relaxed. Not bad. Father had the upper hand. Darkseid's avatar had taken away at least 30% of his divine power. Even though it looked like the battle was going well, he was actually the one who had used up the most divine power. As for the remaining battlefields, none of them were optimistic. The dark transformation being 3 times stronger was not an exaggeration. The new gods of the Apocalypse Star could indeed suppress the new gods of the new creation star. Thea saw an old acquaintance, the Great Plains Wolf. When their eyes met, the Great Plains Wolf hurriedly dodged. This guy won't be able to recover for at least 100 years, Diana whispered when she saw the Great Plains Wolf. Hold on, everyone. Victory is right in front of us. Thea pretended to pull out her holy sword and led the charge. Diana followed closely behind, and the rest of the new Protoss soldiers also charged into the battlefield. Great Plains Wolf? When did you guys come back? The kind grandmother was fighting Lady Canopy. Both sides were evenly matched. When she saw Thea leading the charge, she suddenly realized something. She turned around and saw the Great Plains Wolf, who had returned earlier and was preparing to slack off. None of them were kind people. They were willing to fight when the wind was blowing, but none of them wanted to fight when the wind was blowing. Great Plains Wolf, I let you escape with your life. Stop right there. Thea shouted from afar. The Great Plains wolf's power had dropped to its lowest level in history. He did not dare to fight her. He turned around and ran without thinking. Thea was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. She was stronger than the new gods, and the Apocalypse Planet's gods could not see how strong she was. Seeing the Great Plains wolf turn around and run, they were all very smart. Since someone had taken the lead, they did not want to fall behind and ran in all directions. Darkseid glanced at Thea, took a step forward and left the battlefield. Without 30% of his divine power, he would not be able to defeat Father Canopy. His clone's injuries needed to be treated. Even if they could not be healed, taking back that portion of his divine power was a top priority. Milady only glanced at him when he was out of sight. She whispered, "Damn fatty, why are you staring? We won." It was unknown who it was that roared on the vast battlefield, but the originally evenly matched two sides finally met with a turning point. The Revelation Star began to flee from the entire battle line. Chapter 737. Chase. The Heavenly Father was covered in wounds, but he was in a good mood. This was probably the first time he had defeated Darkseid. He waved his scepter and shouted, but after a moment's hesitation, he stopped himself from attacking the ordinary soldiers. Seeing that the enemy new gods were fleeing one after another, the generals of the new creator star, including Sia, who was almost out of mana, all stopped what they were doing. They claimed that they did not want to attack the ordinary soldiers because of their status, but in reality, they did not have much combat power left. There were many times more apocalyptic demons on the battlefield than there were on Earth. Even though the morale of the new gods' armies was high, it took them a long time to defeat the enemy. Taking into account the casualties on the new continent, at least 300 million apocalyptic demons had died in the battle. The new gods had also suffered heavy casualties. Of the million soldiers who had followed Thea to the new continent, less than 700,000 had returned. 1/3 of them had died on the new continent. The war on the planet of creation was even more intense. Many untrained civilians had picked up weapons and joined the battle. One could only imagine the devastation. "Goddess Thea, please come and take a look at the light." Just as Milady finished telling the Heavenly Father about the battle on her side, the second-generation god, Orion, hurriedly asked her to go and save his good friend. The Heavenly Father really did not have any objections to this adopted son, and hurriedly asked them to go quickly. The bright young man in a white robe and red pants, who used to be very fast, was now lying in a room with a black face. Some unknown substance kept rising from the black gas. Thea knew that it was death gas. The god of light energy, the new god who was known to be able to run as fast as light, was now lying on the bed, barely breathing. A piece of golden dragon skin covered his body. Unfortunately, even the strong aura of light could only delay his death, not heal him. This room was located at one of the highest points on the planet of creation, second only to the Heavenly Father's room. Strong light shone in through the window, but even the strongest sunlight could not get within 3 meters of the light. "Can you guide some light here? Maybe he can heal himself by absorbing external light?" "Nonsense, do you understand the condition of Lord Light's injuries? He lacks vitality. We should replenish it." When Thea and Orion came in, a few healers were arguing with each other. Watching a deity fall into a long slumber due to severe injuries was not something to be happy about. The healers frowned as they discussed the treatment. Unfortunately, their treatment was like throwing a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Compared to the body that had been corroded by the black gas, their treatment was too insignificant. "Lady Thea, Lord Orion." When they saw them come in, they heaved a sigh of relief. Regardless of their professions, they were only mortals while these two were gods. Orion waved them away impatiently and gestured for Thea to come and take a look. Huh. When Thea saw this injury, she immediately understood that it was a soul injury. Who injured him? Black Runner. Ray lured him away and the two of them competed in speed. In the end, Ray lost. Orion said hatefully. As he spoke, he displayed an image of two figures moving as fast as lightning. The one running in front was naturally Light Ray. He was just the god of light, not the god of light. This additional word made the difference in level. In Thea's eyes, he was about the same as the current Barry Allen. The person behind him was dressed in black. It looked like a hilarious set of ski equipment. He held a ski pole in one hand and a ski on the other. He looked comical, but his speed was frighteningly fast. In Thea's eyes, this person's speed had surpassed the speed of taking drugs. He was not running. He was gliding on the path of death. He looked cool, but in reality he ran fast and died fast. Like Barry and Lightray, running a few steps was nothing to them. It was normal for them to use their super speed to buy coffee and tidy up their rooms. However, this death runner was different. Every time he started running, he had to kill someone. It sounded like he had to draw his sword and kill someone when he was unsheathed. In reality, it was like drinking water. Only the person who was comfortable would know if it was warm or cold. The rules of death were not easy to manipulate. Darkseid could not do it, Thea could not do it, and this person could not do it either. Moreover, this person was dancing on the head of death. A small accident could kill this new god. But wasn't this person a prisoner of Darkseid? Why was he fighting for the Dark Lord? Thea did not have time to think. She checked Lightray's injuries. It was just as she had guessed. This black runner who was running around on a black sled was not the death god. He was the god of soul harvesting. Perhaps it was because the divine seat was empty after the death of the soul. This person took the opportunity to brag that he was the death god. Then he was captured and imprisoned by Darkseid. It was not difficult for those who knew. If his soul was extracted, Thea would not be able to do anything. After all, she did not have the divine seed of death. Fortunately, Lightray was also a new god. His soul was strong, so there was still a chance of saving him. Prepare 10 spirit stones for me. Ice spirit hair. Morg spider silk. He rattled off a bunch of materials. A lion memorized them carefully. Who covered him with this piece of broken skin? Isn't this stimulating the soul power in his body? Nonsense. The young mistress took the golden dragon skin away from Lightray and put it in her pocket. She was not afraid that someone would tell on her. Now that she had made some contributions, if her character was perfect and she was popular, the Heavenly Father would be wary of her. The Heavenly Father was a good boss. She had to show some of her shortcomings so that they could get along well in the future. Therefore, she had no qualms about holding an adult golden dragon skin. Sia stayed on the new creation planet for half a month to cure the light. Along the way, she also listened to the teachings of the Heavenly Father several times. Over and over again, the final battle between the good and evil had not really happened yet. This time it was just a rehearsal and so on. The new gods listened with bitter faces. Everyone's condition was really bad. They could not fight even if they wanted to in a short time. The Heavenly Father knew the situation of his subordinates. Their divine power level was below half. If they fought again, more than one Lightray would be injured. The legions replenished their ranks and recovered their strength. They were ready for the next battle. After another half a month, the great battle ended. The multiverse seemed to have quieted down. Thea returned to Earth. First, she accompanied Diana to bury the Amazon sisters. Then she paid a visit to the magic school. They had also contributed in the great battle. Other than Constantine the scoundrel, all the teachers were injured. More than 30 students died in the battle. Among them, 5 celebrities died in the battle. 2 artists died. Yellow Lantern and Blue Lantern's families had to be compensated. Green Lantern's death also needed to be sent back to the main planet of Ura for burial. Thea sent away the reinforcements of the various lanterns. The tense atmosphere was gone. She could finally go home and take a breather. Chapter 738. The Morgan family, as a traitor, was condemned by people all over the world. The family property was seized and all of it was gathered to establish a victims' fund, which was used as compensation for the dead and future living expenses for the injured. 150,000 elite soldiers died in battle, 700,000 soldiers were injured, and more than 300,000 of them lost their ability to move and needed to be supported by the country. The amount of money needed to pay for this could not be calculated in a short time. Coupled with the loss of various weapons and equipment in the battle, a huge number was shared among the countries. Even with the Morgan family's property as a foundation, it still made the finance ministers of various countries tremble. Moira seemed to be possessed by the power of speed. The government worked very quickly, collecting evidence, prosecuting, and adjudicating. The process was completed in less than half a month. Thea had just cured the light, and the 2 knowing main criminals of the Morgan family were shot to death. The remaining family members were each sentenced to 20 years to 1 year in prison. While he was at it, he also made a copy of their property. As for Maxwell Lloyd's Shogi Club, it would bring great pressure to the White House. Moira insisted that this human cancer should be banned. This organization, which was attached to the United Nations and composed of elite agents from various countries, resisted tenaciously. They could remove Maxwell's name and apologize, but they could not ban him. During the war of words between several parties, it was discovered that Maxwell had previously shot a businessman named Ted Cotter. Unfortunately, it was covered up by the Shogi Club. There were nearly $800 million in Maxwell's personal account, which did not look like the wealth of an agent. When the White House continued to investigate, all the clues were cut off, and the investigator could only provide a report of a huge amount of funds from unknown sources. Hey, these guys have new ideas after the war. Moira complained to the young lady who was lying lazily on the sofa in the White House. Thea's spiritual power was greatly depleted, and the external manifestation was that she was sleepy and easily distracted. She also knew who these guys her mother was talking about. How could a few agents dare to challenge the White House? Obviously, there was someone supporting them. They were not satisfied with their current interests and wanted more. Now they were testing the mother and daughter's bottom line. Limited by her identity as a hero of justice, Thea could not make a move. She also knew that her mother's intention was not against the Shogi Club, but the people behind them. It's too complicated. You take your time to deal with it. If it's too troublesome, just let them dance for a few days. Thea leisurely freshened herself up and went to attend the hero assembly. He yawned as he arrived at the Hall of Justice. As soon as he opened the door, he heard Batman and Superman arguing. I don't understand. Why didn't you destroy such a dangerous robot? Superman, I've told you many times that Demon Joie is worth preserving. He is the crystallization of human wisdom, and should not be destroyed so easily. You're playing with fire. Superman frowned as he looked at his old friend. He knew what the other party was thinking too well. It was still the same old trick of leaving a backup plan in order to contain the superhero. Thea looked at the two of them arguing and found it a little funny. She sat lazily beside Diana and watched the show. Did you know that Rong-in quit? Diana whispered. Thea nodded. Today's meeting was naturally to propose the establishment of the Justice League. Unfortunately, when they found the Martian hunter, he refused to participate. His reason was that he was not a superhero, but a Martian who relied on Earth for protection. The two of them had a deep talk. The Martian hunter felt that he had not recovered from his fear of fire, and could only be absent from many fiery occasions. Instead of occupying a position and not doing anything, it was better not to join in the first place. Thea could only express her understanding. Uncle Rong-in is a good person. Unfortunately, time passed quickly, and the remaining people arrived one after another. In this time and space, Victor Stone was still happily playing football as a wide receiver. As one of the shareholders of the Red House, Thea had seen this star athlete in the Red House. From the aesthetic point of view of black people, he was a handsome young man. Victor liked sports and liked to fly on the field. He hoped to get the attention of his father, Silas Stone. Unfortunately, Dr. Stone did not realize this. The father and son's problems could only be solved by themselves. Thea would not be so cruel as to modify him. Steel bones would not appear. The Martian hunter quit, and the few of them proposed that they pull the Green Lantern Hal Jordan in. Together with Thea, Diana, Superman, Batman, the Flash, and Poseidon, there were exactly 7 of them. Superhero. Even superheroes had to be political. Although Hal Jordan made it clear that he would not stay on Earth for long, the few of them still pulled him in. As the universe police, no matter who became the Green Lantern in the future, the Green Lantern would always occupy a place in the official league. Poseidon, who could communicate with Atlantis and was not close to the few of them, was indispensable. In order to balance the ratio of gods, aliens, and earthlings, Batman forced the Flash to participate in the meeting. In general, there were 2 goddesses, 1 Kryptonian, and 1 mixed-blood Atlantean. No matter what the other 3 did, they were all pure earthlings. 3.5 to 3.5 was very equal in terms of bloodline. The few of them were silent. Superman motioned for Thea to speak. As the main force of the battle, the title of leader belonged to her by default. Let's first welcome Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern of Sector 2814. This is his first time attending our meeting. Thea was the first to introduce. The Flash wanted to applaud, but he put his hand down when he saw that the few of them were very serious. Although there were heavy casualties in this war, we have defeated the invasion of evil. This is not the first time, and I don't think it will be the last. Everyone here is the best of the best. No matter what your background is, we need to unite and be united. This will be our theme for a long time. We are sitting here today to make Earth better, and to protect the pure land in our hearts. Although we have ideological disputes, such as whether we should bring hope or fear to mankind, Thea said and looked at Superman and Batman. Or the contradiction between the lanterns. Hal Jordan was still upset about the yellow light. The friction between us and Atlantis is now on the rise again. She looked at Poseidon. Takes two to clap. The politicians on the surface are F***ed, and the ones under the sea are not much better. Although there are so many problems, I believe that the future will get better and better. Future battles should not be fought alone. We need our collective strength and wisdom. My proposal is to solve all the big problems in the future, resolve the contradictions between us, and dissolve the estrangement between humans and aliens. Seek common ground while reserving differences, and establish an alliance, a united Justice League. Chapter 739. Thea didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the Hall of Justice was filled with holiness. The warm sunlight shone into the hall, and everyone's faces seemed to be plated with a layer of gold. I won't be on Earth often. Does that mean I'll? Hal Jordan was more than willing to show off in front of the people on Earth, but he scratched his head when he thought of his own responsibilities. Thea explained to him, our alliance is very loose. Everyone is very capable and has their own things to do. For example, Batman is in Gotham, Superman is in Metropolis, and Diana and I have to go back to New Creation Planet from time to time. This alliance was established to unite everyone. We help each other so that we won't be defeated by our enemies. Okay. I can only say that I will try my best to participate in activities. You know the Guardians of Ura? Thea saw that he was about to say something like F***ck, and quickly stopped him. Go ahead and scold them in front of them. Everyone, do you have any questions? No one had any objections. This far-reaching alliance was thus established. Thea glanced outside under Diana's strange gaze. Sure enough, novels were all lies. There was no golden light for such a great event. This building will be the surface base of the Justice League in the future. I have a lot of training equipment like Superman's red radiation training room and the Flash's speed treadmill. Everyone can come and train if they have nothing to do, Thea said nonchalantly. Superman's face fell. Red radiation training room? Are you sure that's what I need? Thea glanced at the faces of the people in the room. It was as if she was saying, if you have nothing to do, I'm going home to sleep? Your high-dimensional design is very interesting. The trouble on Apocalypse Planet can be intercepted by the New World. What about the crisis in our universe? Batman, who lived in calculations every day, still asked a question. Green Lantern can solve all the problems in the universe. Thea didn't say anything, but Hal jumped up. Batman was expressionless. He was sending a message. I don't believe you. In fact, Thea did not believe it either. The universe was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The Green Lanterns could only solve at most half of the problems. The rest were all experts. Just the group of biochemical weapons from Krypton, the Destroyers and Terminators, could easily cause trouble for the Green Lanterns. In her memory, there were still a few galaxies that the Green Lanterns did not set foot in. What happened next was not too surprising. In order to intercept cosmic threats, Batman contributed his own Watchtower space base as a foothold and observatory for the Alliance in the universe. The cost of this satellite orbiting the Earth had already exceeded the limit that could be measured by money. The technology contained in it was also beyond the current peak level of human beings. They teleported directly from the Hall of Justice to the Watchtower. In an instant they came to space from the bright hall. Looking at the blue planet under their feet, the Flash and Poseidon were a little surprised as it was their first time coming to such a high place. Diana and Superman also looked at the large space base. The black walls and silver pipes were a perfect match for Batman's color. There were meeting rooms, training rooms, lounges, and entertainment rooms. It was hard to imagine how an ordinary person like Batman could build such a base in space with existing human technology. Thea tried to feel it with her heart. She was too familiar with this kind of teleportation technology. It was an imitation of the Green Lantern teleportation, and there were some traces of her magical teleportation. Needless to say, this was simulated by Batman using scientific means after collecting various data from her teleportation. The weapons and equipment of the Watchtower were also extraordinary. There were all kinds of missiles, planes, space-based weapons, and so on. If there was a warning in advance, the Watchtower could indeed provide some protection for the Earth. Poseidon was not interested in modern weapons, and Superman pulled him aside to look at the sky scenery. Thea checked the main control system of the Watchtower. Even if her computer skills were not as good as Felicity's, she could see that there were a lot of backdoors. However, she did not point it out. Batman must have left a lot of backdoors if he had contributed such a giant, which was very in line with his character. "I'll share part of the maintenance costs in the future," Thea said. There was no other way. Unlike the Hall of Justice that she contributed, she only needed to find someone to clean it. It did not cost much a year. The Watchtower was such a large sky fortress, and the daily maintenance cost was huge. Diana and Poseidon were nominally princesses and kings, but they did not have much power. They were all poor in the secular sense. Superman and the Flash were working class, and Hal Jordan was a member of the unemployed army. The rest were the two tycoons. Batman contributed the Watchtower mostly because he wanted her to help share the cost. Lord Bat happily took the check from Missy, and the rest of the people shared part of the work. Those who had space survival skills were responsible for external maintenance, and those who did not were responsible for internal cleaning. The establishment of the Justice League did not require approval, and there was no need for a press conference. The heroes only needed to show their faces in the Hall of Justice, and everyone would know that they had chosen this place as their base. Darkseid had suffered a great loss, and Earth had finally ushered in peace. Thea was ready to continue her big development plan. The people of Earth had to go out. As long as they went out of the solar system, human technology would welcome a new round of explosion. Unfortunately, there were always some people who liked to disagree. After the war ended, the media was released, and all kinds of discordant voices burst out. Who should be responsible for the lives of the 150,000 soldiers? The new world is a complete scam. Without the superheroes, there would not be such a disaster today. Are they really heroes? The traditional media was still reporting conservatively, but some online media began to unscrupulously criticize the current situation. Under their provocation, the trust of the ordinary people in the government and the superheroes began to decrease. Even after the release of The Avenger 3, the people still did not understand why so many soldiers would go to a foreign land to fight. 150,000 soldiers died, and 700,000 were injured. What benefits did they gain? This is stupid. What kind of view is this? Without the superheroes, there would be no war? Does it mean that people would not fall sick without doctors? Do we have to fight on Earth until the mountains collapse and the Earth shatters, and let everyone see that we are saving the world? Thea slammed the table in anger, but she did not lose her mind. At the end, she held back and slammed the table lightly. Shut down all the websites that started this. Check their taxes and verify their qualifications. If there is nothing wrong with them, release the hackers in your prison and take them down. At this time, Missy was sitting in the Heaven's Eye Society's office, and she was throwing a tantrum on behalf of the president's mother. Amanda was expressionless. She was used to being behind the scenes, and she had seen worse and worse. This was nothing. Thea then went to the Hall of Justice. The defamation incident had affected the reputation of the heroes, and it had to be discussed. Chapter 740. The few superheroes had participated in the great battle not long ago. To be honest, pulling them to a barren continent to fight was already the best choice. However, the people chose not to believe it under the guidance of some ulterior motives. They thought that it was all fake and a lie. The superheroes could not hand out flyers on the streets to explain Darkseid's origin, how the Universe Emperor could affect the lives of ordinary people, and how much help it would provide for their future employment. Ordinary people only cared about what happened in front of them, how much the new energy stock rose, who would win the Super Bowl, and what they could buy at home. That was all they cared about. Telling them that there were 52 parallel universes was like playing the lute to a cow. Since she couldn't brainwash them or use administrative intervention, Sia really didn't have any good ideas. She could only leave the problem to the Alliance. "What's the president's response?" Batman asked. "Maintain the status quo. Our system allows for voices of dissent." That's what her aides suggested. Thea said casually. Moira was the only official channel of the Justice League. She was also under great pressure. Thea did not want to make things difficult for her mother. It was laughable. The reason Batman could walk into the Hall of Justice so openly was because of the government's amnesty order. No matter how high his reputation was among the people, it was useless. His criminal record was 3 meters high, enough to fill 5 safety deposit boxes. His crimes spanned nearly 20 years. From a legal point of view, he was a real fugitive and the most serious one. His amnesty order was issued at the same time as Luthor. Even though Bruce Wayne had been the chief of the Gotham Police Department for many years, Batman's arrest order had never been lifted. It was only right before the war that he was pardoned. Otherwise, he would have to deal with the government's pursuit while fighting Darkseid, which would be like the original Batman universe. "Use your identity as a reporter to explain it," Thea looked at Superman and said vaguely. It had to be mentioned here that Batman had made a bad start. He wore a mask every day, making it so that some of the 7 of them knew each other's identities, while others didn't. For example, Green Lantern didn't know Superman's true identity, the Sea King. Only Superman, Thea, and Diana knew about Batman's true identity. The whole world knew about Thea's identity, so this was easy to handle. The whole world knew that Diana Prince was Diana Prince, but the people didn't know that Diana was Wonder Woman, but the heroes all knew. The remaining 3 intersected with each other, knowing how many of them there were. In short, their relationship was very messy, which made them feel very restrained when they addressed each other. Brother Superman agreed very quickly. Thea knew that the effect wouldn't be too great. Back then, the higher-ups knew that they had to face a crisis, so they were very harmonious. Now that the crisis was over, all sorts of troublemakers jumped out. Seeing that she didn't want to talk, Batman proposed a new topic. The Justice League couldn't rely on the 7 of them alone. They needed new blood. Even if they didn't join for the time being, they could be included in the list of candidates. "Okay, I propose one. Green Arrow," Miss Thea said with a normal expression, as if she was talking about a stranger. Batman's face twitched. There was no problem with Green Arrow Oliver's qualifications. The 7 people in this room basically all knew Green Arrow, but he was too close to Miss Thea. In order to curb Miss Thea's power and not turn the Justice League into the new meeting room of the Quinn family, he couldn't let Green Arrow in, at least not now. "This can be a candidate." Batman didn't reject it directly. "Black Canary?" Thea suggested another candidate. Batman was a little depressed. "Don't think I don't know about your relationship with Merlin. This Black Canary is also your relative." He thought about it. A lady with a strong sense of justice. She can also be a candidate. The few of them mentioned a few more names. There was Firestorm, who performed well in the battle, and Atom Man, who had already made a battlesuit and made a name for himself. The young heroes were all rejected. According to Batman, the Justice League wasn't a babysitter. Those who joined had to be able to fight. In the end, a short list was made for future observation. As expected, Green Arrow's name was at the top. This person appeared in Gotham. "I think his actions are very suspicious. We should investigate." At the end of the meeting, Batman threw out a stack of photos and distributed them to the few of them. Thea picked up the photo and looked at it. A young man with blonde hair, wearing a pair of goggles and yellow and blue tights. The photo was very blurry. The person emitted a wave of energy and stopped a speeding car. Although it seemed to have saved the citizens, the car still flew out and crashed into a shop. Batman attached a message to the photo. The car crashed into the shop and injured 11 people. The Gotham police were looking for this person. Anyone who knew his whereabouts could contact the police. This guy was the Golden Vanguard, right? Thea looked at the photo for a long time. She didn't have a deep impression of him. She only knew that this person existed. This was another transmigrator. If she remembered correctly, he was from the same hometown as Reverse Lightning. They were both from the 25th century. His son was also an old acquaintance of Thea. The famous wave rider captain of tomorrow's legend, Rip Hunter. Never seen him before. I don't know him. She didn't tell the truth. After all, the Golden Vanguard wasn't a bad person. If he had any problems, he would contact the Justice League himself. She didn't think much of it. Green Lantern, on the other hand, was excited to capture the Golden Vanguard with Batman. The Golden Vanguard's technological equipment was very sharp. The two of them chased him for a week and saw him twice. He had a good attitude. Unfortunately, Green Lantern Hal had a bad temper. The three of them started to fight after a few words. They couldn't catch him either time. After another meeting, Batman suggested that everyone should go and capture him together. This guy's technology is very advanced and he seems to have some kind of magic effect. Anyone who appears around him will be unlucky. We've been following him for a week. There were 3 traffic accidents around him. All 3 times we saved the dignitaries who were about to die. The price was the destruction of a post office building, 5 police cars, 25 police officers, 39 injured passersby, and property damage. Batman rambled on for a long time before he came up with the conclusion that this guy was a magician, or had some kind of power that brought bad luck with him. Thea almost spat in his face. What kind of magic was that? He was a transmigrator. What was so strange about him knowing a lot of information about the rich people who were in trouble? As for those injured people, it was all because the Golden Vanguard didn't know how to control his power. This guy could be said to be a hero who was arrogant but weak. However, she couldn't say this. Seeing her lover in a difficult position, Diana volunteered to help. The Valkyrie's action was no small matter. In less than 2 hours, they caught the Golden Vanguard like a dead dog. The golden-haired man was brought into the Hall of Justice with a truth lasso wrapped around his neck twice. He then spilled the beans. Chapter 741. My name is Michael Carter. I was born in Gotham City. It's the 25th century in Gotham City. I was originally the quarterback of the team, but I was exposed due to gambling. After that, I found a job guarding a museum at night. In the end, I stole a few pieces of equipment and came to this world. I want to start over, be a good person, be a superhero. The truth was revealed. Everything that was said under the truth news was the truth. This guy was not a bad person, so they did not make things difficult for him. Go, we'll protect this world. You should return to your timeline. Diana untied the noose and comforted him. As for the Golden Vanguard's suggestion to join the Justice League, they all voted against it. Even the Green Arrow was not in. Who do you think you are? Originally, Thea thought that the Golden Vanguard was just a small fry, so she did not pay much attention to it. It was not until Moira brought her a piece of news that she took it seriously. International Justice League? Are you kidding me? Thea looked at the news in her hand and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Just by looking at their leader, she knew how unreliable this organization was. The Golden Vanguard. The leader of this International Justice League was the Golden Vanguard. It was worth mentioning that this name was issued by the United Nations Committee for the Supervision and Management of Supernatural Beings. Another pawn thrown out by those people, right? There was nothing that could not be said between mother and daughter. A committee that she had never heard of randomly put a few officials in front of the stage, and then used the name of the United Nations to form a team to fight against the alliance. It was full of the style of a politician. Thea did not need to look at the report to know that the Golden Vanguard was still dreaming of being a superhero. Unfortunately, he did not know that he had become a pawn of those people. From the bottom of his heart, the Golden Vanguard did want to help others. Unfortunately, the records of the 25th century only recorded the rich and powerful. The history books would only write that on a certain day, a certain financial group's chairman, or a certain state's senator was killed. It would not write that ordinary citizens were killed by a certain neighbor, or how many people in the slums froze to death in winter. These were not recorded. This guy was very characteristic of a transmigrator. He followed the map and saved a lot of people, but in the end he found out. Why are all the people I save rich people? His reputation was indeed high enough to cause a group of people to misunderstand him, thinking that he was someone who fished for fame, even though he was originally. The International Righteous Alliance is currently recruiting. It is estimated that they will officially appear at the United Nations at the beginning of next month. Are you interested in taking a look? Thea gave it some thought. She had nothing to do at that time anyway, so she might as well go. She wasn't even afraid of Darkseid. She didn't attack those small fries only because of the rules of the game. Go use your status as the first daughter to take a look. Do I need to get rid of some of them? Thea asked as if nothing had happened. The politicians thought that they were doing it discreetly, but in fact, without a new god like Desard to cover them up, their little tricks could not be hidden in front of the deity of trade. It was too easy to cause a fire or a car accident to deal with them. Moira thought for a moment. She had always known that her daughter was not a pure person, so she was not surprised. We can't deal with too much at once. Let's deal with 1/10 first and see their reaction. The mother and daughter pair had very viciously decided the fate of several families and dozens of people. It was not suitable to have a big change of blood. Instead, they created some unexpected conflicts, such as having two long-cherished families fight each other. Who would know? It was impossible to tell who was behind the scenes from the outside. As for who to suspect, it was better to let them be on tenterhooks and be paranoid. How are the preparations for the business alliance? Moira asked. It has entered Pluto's orbit. It's best if we can find it here and establish a trade relationship. The Neutral Business Alliance had been providing her with various resources. Now that Earth's technology was almost established, it was a little difficult to enter the universal era. However, with the support of the Neutral Business Alliance, the speed would increase instantly. The mother and daughter's plan was to put on a show to divert the attention of the ordinary people. Interstellar trade, how classy! On the other hand, they would use underhanded methods to intimidate those unruly wolves. With both methods, it would be easy to resolve the situation. By the way, what's in the black land that you circled in the New World? At the end of their conversation, Moira suddenly thought of this and asked. The military and those families have sent people in to investigate. Unfortunately, no one came out alive. Thea smiled and shook her head. I remember that I put up a sign saying no entry. It's dangerous inside, but these people still went in. That's the Sea of Souls. Even Superman can't enter. These people really don't want to live. You child. Moira patted her shoulder lightly. The sign you mentioned is not even the size of a palm. What's the use of it? Your Sea of Souls is about the same size as the 5 Great Lakes. It can't stop those people's curiosity at all. Thea raised her small face with a proud expression. Who cares if they die? Anyway, I've reminded them. If they want to go, they can go. She didn't tell her mother that she had created the Banshee clan inside the Sea of Souls. A large number of souls of the dead were stored there. Every day there would be new Banshees born. Now that the number of the clan had exceeded 200, a few elites would enter every few days to relieve their boredom. For the establishment of the International Justice League, the existing heroes were not very happy, but they felt that it was not a bad thing to increase the power of justice. Only Batman saw everyone as an enemy. He wanted to infiltrate the enemy's ranks to spy on them. Several people had an understanding of his character. No problem, you can go. Justice League, International Justice League, American Justice League, Dark Justice League, Youth Justice League. These were the scenery on the road for Thea. Her goal had never changed, which was to establish the Women's Justice League. Star City, this was the base she chose for the future of the Justice League. Star City's economy was prosperous. Under Moira's 8 years of governance, the population had exceeded 11 million. Now it was a super city. Occasionally, there were some small thieves, but they were all eliminated by the Green Arrow team. Star City's public security had always been the best in the country. Star City's transportation was very convenient, and it was rich in materials. Whether it was shopping, leisure, or entertainment, it was a first-class resort, not to mention that this was her own territory. Miss Moira's position for the Justice League was not to fight and kill. Those dirty and smelly villains, such as mud faces and crocodiles, were all left to the heroes to fight. Do you really want to establish such an organization? Hee. Diana looked at the program document that Thea had spent 3 days researching and laughed. Isn't there a little too many people? There are only 7 of us, including the Justice League. Your list? She laughed and asked. Thea leaned on her shoulder and whispered as if she was talking in her sleep. How can it be? With our reputation, we can gather everyone to play together, and they will all come. Chapter 742. Thea and Diana still had a lot of faith. The next day, The female heroes who received the invitations all over the world hesitated for a moment before choosing to attend. Star City's local Green Arrow Shadow, the Black and White Canaries Lance sisters, and Felicity began to help clean up the scene. The rich Thea directly occupied half of the street. In fact, this was the real estate that Robert Sr. had bought in order to stop Malcolm's plan to destroy the slums. It could be said that this large area had occupied the Quinn Group's cash for a long time. Now that time had passed, Robert Sr. had long passed away, and Old Ma had gone to the New World to teach astrology. This real estate had not been of any use. Thea waved her hand 2 years ago and flattened it all. Now it had built a women's street that integrated food, accommodation, and entertainment. She did not set up a sign that forbade men from entering. She did not object to those who wanted to come in for a stroll, but the shop sold only female products. If they were not afraid of being pointed at by a bunch of women, they could come in at any time. Female heroes came to Star City one after another. The first to arrive were Batgirl Barbara, Catwoman Selena, Huntress Helena, Batwoman Kate Kane, and the big lowly Cassandra Kane. She took away more than half of the entire Batgirl team. Thea even had a malicious thought. Afu was old and could not cook. Master Bruce, who did not trust others, was most likely squatting at home and eating instant noodles with his son. What was Batman's expression when he heard that I was going to set up a couplet? Thea asked Barbara curiously. Barbara hurriedly put on a straight face, rubbed the lines of her face, and looked very serious. She imitated Batman and took 2 steps. Finally, she said in a low muffled voice, "Nonsense." Haha. A few women who knew Batman laughed so hard that they were convulsing. Using this familiar person as a source of amusement, the gap between people was instantly closed. As for whether Master Batman would sneeze or not, they didn't care. Not long after, Supergirl's Kara Danvers and Alex Danvers were born. Princess Starfire and Martian Manhunter's niece Megan. Superman's wife Louise Ryan, the Flash's girlfriend, Iris West, and the Sea King's wife Mira. All the superheroes' family members rushed to the scene. Many independent heroines had also come. Mary McBee, the female fox who wore a tribal necklace and could use the abilities of any animal. Raven, the big lowly who left Thea 2 years ago to attend high school alone. Hal Jordan's girlfriend, Carol Ferris of the Purple Lantern Corps. The Sea King's little friends, Yavala, and the Prophet Cassina. Zatanna, Poison Ivy, Lightning Lady, Frost Killer. There were also Blazing Beatrice and Isidora, who were preparing to join the International Righteous Alliance. When they heard that there was no conflict between the International Righteous Alliance and the International Righteous Alliance, they also came to join in the fun. Thea had also invited Madame Xanadu, but Madame Xanadu declined the invitation on the grounds that she was an old woman and would not attend a gathering of young people. Fiora also didn't like this kind of occasion and chose to reject it. There were those who were particularly good at fighting, such as the 2 goddesses, and those who could not even kill a chicken, such as Felicity. In short, no matter how strong or weak they were, there were 29 heroines gathered. Compared to the slacking Thea, Diana had the demeanor of a big sister. When she saw that everyone had quieted down, she opened her mouth and spoke a lot about how women should be self-reliant and get rid of the male-dominated society. Thea didn't have such a strong sense of feminism. Everyone present were heroines. If they lacked independence, they wouldn't have made it to where they were today. The purpose of her establishing the Righteous Alliance was to unite the ladies. Compared to the male superheroes everywhere, there were too few heroines, and they all appeared as support staff. In a relaxed and comfortable environment, they could exchange some insights with each other. If they were of similar strength, they could both learn something from each other. Most of the time it was to expand their social circle. Many heroines had few friends apart from their teammates, such as Barbara Gordon. During the day, she was the librarian of the reference room, and at night she fought and killed with Batman. When she got home, she fell asleep and had almost no private time. Ladies and gentlemen, No, it's a slip of the tongue. There are no men here today. Thea said in a relaxed tone to ease the atmosphere. Everyone here is the elite of the elite. The purpose of my initiative to establish the Righteous Alliance is to give everyone another platform to communicate and learn from each other. Heroines aren't appendages to male heroes. They should have their own voices, but we shouldn't make ourselves too nervous. Only by understanding the world and seeing the beauty of this world can we have enough faith to protect it. We won't use hope to move the world, nor will we use fear to frighten the bad guys. In my opinion, this is a little biased and arbitrary. Everyone should have their own view of the world, but we can't use one standard to apply to everyone. Our purpose is to be tolerant, to use the unique perspective of women to observe the world and change the world. Alright, I finished speaking. Our Female Justice Alliance is officially established today. Still the same thing. Even if the mission is heavy, don't forget to laugh. The more happy memories there are, the stronger the belief to protect. The heroines applauded respectfully. This opening was over. You have a deep understanding of protecting? The Valkyrie teased her. Thea laughed. She wouldn't say that this sentence was extracted from the memories of the protagonists. Wasn't it a habit of heroes to recall the beautiful past and defeat the enemy? Half a block and a short coastline were drawn together by her. Whether it was swimming, fitness, sunbathing, shopping, training, or beauty treatments, there were all kinds of places. With her wealth, she even created many entertainment programs that were popular in other planets. Diana once asked if she should give the heroines some funds for their activities. Thea thought about it but didn't say anything. Heroines generally had high self-esteem. Giving money to others didn't have any practical use other than showing that they were rich. Could easily cause the opposite effect. In fact, most heroines didn't lack money. For example, Felicity was an executive, while Carol Ferris's family ran an airline. Zatanna was the descendant of an ancient family. Frostdora was the princess of the Norwegian royal family. They naturally didn't lack money. Otherwise, there were those like Shadow and Laurel who had rich boyfriends. The poor studied and the rich fought. This saying was true most of the time. A few familiar heroines went out to play in 2s and 3s. Half a block was filled with heroines. It had to be said that this was quite rare. They took off their combat suits, threw away their swords, put on light makeup, and changed into casual clothes. They walked on the comfortable streets with their companions. They didn't have to walk through tall buildings in the hazy night. They didn't have to carefully avoid the rain of bullets. They faced the sun calmly like ordinary people and walked into the shops. This kind of time was too rare for them. Chapter 743. The heroines could fight back and forth among thousands of soldiers and horses, so she didn't need to arrange any guides. Sia and Diana were dressed very casually. They went out together arm in arm. Are you feeling better? Diana asked as they entered the cafe and ordered a cup of coffee. More or less, but there are still some problems. Diana was the only one who understood Thea's current situation. Defeating Darkseid was not an easy feat. She had used up a huge amount of divine power in a short period of time, and it was a burden on her mental state. This was also why she was so dizzy every day. She did not have the energy to think about anything else. She only put up a no entry sign in her soul sea. This was not a joke. She simply did not have the energy to enter. Darkseid's divine power must still be lingering in the sea. She could only put it aside for now. As for the Earthlings who were not afraid of death and thought that there were many secrets hidden in the sea, she would just let them be. In the fight with Darkseid, the dark divine power had infected part of her. She had her own understanding of the dark domain. She could get rid of it with time. Otherwise, her origin would be damaged. How long do you think Darkseid will take to recover? This question stumped Thea. She had not thought about it. She took a sip of her coffee. The warm coffee flowed down her throat and into her stomach. The warmth was very comfortable. I'm trying my best to dissolve the dark divine power. He has more soul divine power in his clone. If he doesn't want to give up his clone's divine power, he'll have to dissolve my soul divine power before he can merge them again. Theoretically speaking, I think it'll take 2 years. Because of his level, he has more tricks up his sleeve than I do, so the process might be shorter. However, to recover and replenish his divine power, I think it'll take at least 3 years. 3 years, huh? Oh. Diana was silent. She had done her best in this battle. Unfortunately, she had not done much damage. The difference in strength between her and the Great Lord of Darkness was too great. Thea grabbed her hand. Don't worry. I'll be back to normal in half a year. Father will also be mostly recovered. Next time, even if he fights in his true form, we'll have a good chance of winning. All right. I believe you. Looking at Diana's determined gaze, Thea didn't know what to do. In this world, the only one who could infinitely improve was Superman. After hiding in the sun for thousands of years, he would definitely be invincible when he came out. He was the real protagonist of destiny. No other person or god had this potential. As for Thea and Diana, their paths were already set in stone. They could only accumulate godhood until they reached Darkseid's level. As for what would happen after that, only the heavens knew. It was a pity that there were only so many godhoods. The ones that were suitable for Diana were all with Heavenly Father. Unless Heavenly Father was killed, it would be very difficult for Diana to take a step forward. As for asking Diana to comprehend the shadow of origin, that was pure nonsense. Not to mention whether or not she could comprehend it, even if she could, Diana's personality would change greatly. Without her sunshine-like warmth, Thea herself would also sink. When that day really came, it was simply unimaginable. Two demonesses, torturing the earth and attacking the apocalypse star, and the new star of creation, killing all the old and new gods and returning the world to its original state. That was really good and powerful. Diana's warmth was the most important thing that kept Thea's heart. Thea couldn't let her see the shadow of origin. Let's go to the beach to sunbathe? She suggested, seeing that the atmosphere was dull. Diana didn't care. When they were about to walk to the beach, they realized that neither of them had brought swimsuits. The customs of the Amazon were originally from ancient Greece. Diana grew up on Paradise Island, which was full of women. At first, she didn't have the concept of swimsuits at all. Now she had more or less restrained herself, but she still felt that swimsuits were troublesome. Thea wasn't that bold. Her secretary, Miss Maisie, had taken leave to deal with Luther's matter. She didn't have an assistant by her side. She was also not in the right state of mind for the past 2 days. She took out her travel bag from the space ring and searched for a long time, but couldn't find a swimsuit. She had no choice but to buy one. The shops here were all female shop managers and female employees. There was almost no one who didn't know Thea. The two of them picked a few swimsuits according to their sizes and went to the fitting room to try them on. The swimsuit that Diana chose in the end was the same as her. It was a fiery red swimsuit, revealing her firm and smooth stomach. The slender belt went around the back and tied to the back of her neck. Her hair was tied into a ponytail. Thea casually chose a swimsuit. She was happy when she put it on. It was a classic black and white style. The left side was white and the right side was black. There was a thin belt at the back. Overall, it didn't look too seductive, but it was very beautiful and refreshing. She didn't plan to go into the water. Her hair was still loose. The two of them put on sunglasses and moved 2 beach chairs to lie on. As for the sunscreen, it was completely unnecessary. Diana had been on Paradise Island for thousands of years and never knew what sunscreen was. She didn't have this habit even after entering human society for hundreds of years. Miss Maisie didn't need to mention. She also had a physique that absorbed sunlight. The two of them weren't the only ones on the beach. A few female heroes who were close to the water were also here. Mayla the water controller, Caitlin the frost killer, and Dora the ice controller were seriously practicing. Inadvertently looking over, Thea realized that Dora's energy attribute was very similar to that of a mage. It was just that the way she cast spells came from her bloodline. She had the ability to control and create ice. When she gave it her all, her eyes were white and she could control the weather. She could even create a strong snowstorm. Ice arrows, ice walls, ice storms, and all kinds of ice applications were used by the three of them. The Queen of Atlantis, the descendant of a human scientist, and the Norwegian royal family. The three of them had similar abilities in combat power. Waves and ice were constantly being created and transformed between the three of them. Each of them could see that the other party's method of energy circulation was completely different from their own. Although they could not learn it, they could use the other party's knowledge to improve themselves. By learning from the other party's usage of ice, they would be able to improve themselves. Thea took a few glances and stopped paying attention. The strength of the three of them was not bad, but it stopped at a decent level. With a wave of her hand, she created a barrier and blocked the cold current. Under the warm light of Hushi, she relaxed and slowly fell asleep. He didn't know how much time had passed when he heard shouts in his ears. Only then did he slowly wake up. Faster! Faster! She knew it was Felicity from the loud voice. Go Mela. The accent was a little strange. It seemed to be the Sea King's little friend Yavala. The rest of the guys were also watching the show. Thea took off the sun hat on her face and looked over. She couldn't help but laugh. She saw a few female heroes shouting excitedly on the shore. Diana was competing with Mela in swimming. Chapter 744. Diana's popularity was not bad, and there were many people cheering for her. Her movements were very graceful. Her arms swung in turn, and great strength flowed in the lines of her muscles. The blue seawater was lightly swept behind her, and her two long legs kicked the water elegantly. She and the water had reached a kind of extreme harmony. If Diana was like a fish, then Mira herself was a fish. She nimbly twisted her waist and swung her legs, and her whole body darted forward as if the resistance in the water did not exist. She ignored the resistance and gravity of the water. She did not need to paddle like a human. She was like a sharp arrow that had been released from a bow, piercing through the water. When Thea began to watch, they had just finished their warm-up and were each exerting their strength. Diana's swimming skills were very pleasing to the eye. With a few consecutive strokes, she overtook Mela with the help of her divine power, and was 5 or 6 meters ahead. Mela smiled. Swimming to her was as natural as breathing. She did not make any extra movements and easily overtook Diana with the help of the current. There was not much suspense in the competition between the two girls. Even if the Valkyrie used all her strength, she was still no match for the Atlantean. Mela was much faster than her. Even if she was no match for Diana, she still swam the entire distance. You're awake. Thea handed a towel over. Diana did not look dejected as she dried her hair and asked casually. Thea nodded and curled up in Diana's arms like a lazy cat. Seeing her like this, Diana knew that she was not awake yet. She coaxed her back to sleep. You're making my heart ache. Diana made the bed and threw Thea onto it. She gently stroked her furrowed brows. This girl kept saying that this was a child and that was a child. In fact, she was also a child. She had inexplicably shouldered the burden of the entire world, and fought so hard to defeat the enemy. Ordinary people did not understand and were full of sarcasm, gossip, and doubts. Diana was actually very angry. Even her belief in protecting was almost shaken. She fought so hard just to protect this group of people. Were they worthy? However, looking at Thea's weak and powerless appearance, she hid everything in the bottom of her heart. It had nothing to do with those arrogant people. This was her true goal to protect. The next morning, the young mistress rubbed her sleepy eyes and opened the thick curtains. Only then did she realize that it was already past 10 o'clock. I actually slept for such a long time? Stretching himself, he was unexpectedly in good spirits. Putting down the burden and having someone by his side to look after him, that feeling was really relaxing. Activating her supervision, Thea could see everything clearly. She couldn't help but sigh. These women had gotten to where they were today partly because of fate, but mostly because of their personalities. They were a bunch of tough women who couldn't stay still. The female heroes were now competing in the martial arts field. She changed into a casual outfit and walked over slowly. The training field was originally a gymnasium, but now it was completely private property. The huge martial arts field was divided into 9 sections. The outer section was an ordinary martial arts field. In order to take care of personal habits and privacy, there were 4 sealed rooms and 4 open-air arenas. The middle room had a superpower suppression effect. Even Thea's ability would be suppressed by more than half if she went in. In order to prevent the female heroes from going into play and the bad guys blocking the door and shooting at them, the superpower suppression device was placed in the center of the field. The control system was controlled by Gideon, and there was an emergency gem underground that could teleport them to the new world. At this time, the Danvers sisters were training in the central room. They were similar to her cousin. Without the Kryptonian attribute bonus, Kara could not defeat Alex, who had undergone strict special agent training. This was the result of being trained by Fiora several times. The original spacetime was probably worse. Kara, the Supergirl, was beaten black and blue by her sister, but she had a good learning talent. She could quickly master everything related to combat. Thea only watched for 5 minutes and noticed her improvement. Although the improvement seemed small, it was quite amazing compared to the people on Earth who had to persevere and practice to improve. The other few sparring partners were ordinary people. Laurel's lips were a little swollen, as if she had been slashed by a wooden sword, but she still persisted in sparring with Barbara. White Canary Sarah Lance was having a duel with Batwoman Kate Kane. She had been trained by the Assassin League and her skills were a notch higher than Batwoman's. However, her opponent was equally experienced and it was impossible to tell who would win in a short period of time. Diana was also suppressing her strength and sparring with the big lowly Thea. The big lowly's martial arts talent could be said to be earth-shattering. Now that she had received careful guidance from Batman, Diana did not use her divine power, sword, or shield. She was not a match for her at all with only her Amazon martial arts. Thea estimated that she would be defeated in a minute. The rest of the sparring partners had special abilities and magic. They were either gesturing with each other or discussing some theories with each other. Poison Ivy and Fire Beatrice were researching a kind of powerful flower fertilizer, and they summoned a plant to test it on the spot. Ice Dora knew Zatanna, and the two families were somewhat related. They were talking about the effect of bloodline on magic power. Of course, not everyone liked to fight so much. There were always a few exceptions. Thea saw Princess Starfire and Lightning Lady. The two of them were excitedly telling the Martian girl Megan about their experiences on television. Lightning Lady talked about her past as a host, and Starfire also talked about her new show. When they talked about the fanaticism of the fans, the two women's faces were flushed red, causing Megan to be amazed. She wished that she was the one surrounded by the crowd. The three fellows at the periphery were even more unique. Felicity, Iris West, and Louise Lane, the three powerless women, were sitting together, discussing their experiences in terms of wedding dresses and childcare. Black Lady Ayres talked about her relationship with Barry, and the problems she was facing now. The two of them, who were childhood sweethearts, were already living together, but they still felt that something was missing. The other two experienced ladies analyzed the crux of her problem. They were too familiar with each other. It was not easy to do it. Wedding dresses, decorations for the new house, wedding preparations, the three women talked more and more about common topics. Although there was an accident, the child was already 10 years old, and Louise was quite experienced in this aspect. She taught the two women who were preparing to walk down the aisle. She talked a lot about her wedding decorations, what she did on the day before, what she did on the day, and what she did after the wedding. As for her childcare experience, the child was already 10 years old. How could she have any childcare experience? Thea was speechless. She had thought about taking in these three fellows for a long time. It was impossible to expect them to fight criminals in capes. It was already a blessing for a hero not to cause trouble. However, as the wife of Superman, the girlfriend of the Flash, and the girlfriend of the Atom, they had the qualifications to join the Women's Union. The Women's Union. Chapter 745. Thea, come here and spar with the little girl. The lady was in a daze when she suddenly heard Diana calling her. She quickly looked over. She saw Diana waving at her from afar. The competitive Valkyrie couldn't hold on any longer, and managed to maintain a draw. She didn't expect the big lowly to be so powerful, and quickly called for reinforcements to replace her. Hee. Thea was about to laugh when she saw the Valkyrie glaring at her. She quickly restrained herself. She took off her coat and revealed the elastic singlet inside. Her hair was also tied up. She took a deep breath and placed all her divine power in the deepest part of her body. She also wanted to see how powerful Cassandra was. Do you want to take a break? She asked. The big lowly shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Her fighting spirit is very high. How troublesome. Thea didn't have such a strong desire to win. She originally wanted to play casually, but seeing how serious the big lowly was, she could only correct her attitude and respect her opponent. This was the basic virtue of a martial artist. Right hand in front, left hand behind. She stood still with both feet and gestured for the opponent to attack first. The big lowly's eyes narrowed. Thea's starting position was often used by Madame Shiva. It was as if time had reversed, and she had returned to the time when she and her mother depended on each other. She realized that this was a martial arts competition. She hurriedly focused her mind and stared at Thea without blinking. In the blink of an eye, she suddenly sped up and rushed to Thea's side in 2 short steps. She punched out with her left fist. When Thea blocked, she twisted her waist and kicked at her abdomen. You're fast. Thea withdrew all her divine power. Her attributes were only slightly higher than an ordinary person's. She pressed her palms down to block the kick. At the same time, she raised her leg to hook the big loli's supporting leg. The big loli bent her knees and jumped lightly. Her body was like a bird. She flipped in the air and kicked at Thea's face again. Thea tilted her head and dodged. At the same time, she rushed half a step forward and hit Cassandra's shoulder with her elbow. The big loli missed her kick and slapped away Thea's elbow with her left hand. Unfortunately, she had already lost by half a move. In the face of Thea's pressure step by step, she was not in a hurry. She did 3 backflips on the spot and widened the distance between them again. Thea repositioned herself and waited for her opponent to attack. The two of them leaped up like rabbits and swooped down like hawks. After exchanging a few blows, their levels could be seen. Although the big loli's attacks were fierce, her reaction speed and battle awareness were at an extremely high level. But compared to Thea, she was still lacking. Thea's talent in martial arts was not bad. After all, she was what Malcolm called a natural warrior. However, this good depended on who she was compared to. She was average, but she was nothing compared to the big loli. Fortunately, she did not walk the path of martial arts to the end. Now that she stood at a different height, she naturally had a new perspective on martial arts. Although this process could not be replicated by others, she called herself a contemporary martial artist and no one would object. On the other hand, the big loli's body was not fully developed yet. Secondly, her martial arts were still in the ascendant stage and her combat experience was not rich enough. It was obvious from her kick that she was a little impatient. Continue. Thea waved her hand and motioned for her opponent to continue the attack. Their attacks were fierce and ruthless. The few heroines who were competing slowly stopped. Even those who were discussing the wedding dress were attracted. Kara was also dragged out by Alex like a dead dog to watch. Her attacking style is very similar to the Alliance's martial arts. I've known her for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen her fight like this. I always thought she was from the mysterious side and did not know any martial arts. Although there were many examples of Miss Shiva's martial arts, White Canary Sarah Lance could see Thea's background with just a few glances. This was too familiar and it was difficult to mistake. Was this young lady related to the Alliance? She could only ask her sister Laurel. Laurel vaguely had some guesses, but she was very smart and did not ask anyone for confirmation. Was the truth important? As long as everyone was together in harmony, it was more important than anything else. If she wanted to know the truth, she felt that Batman must have some inside information, but she had never asked. She used the excuse of not knowing to fool her sister and watched seriously. There was almost no growth potential in martial arts in this world. It was impossible to break through the void and become a celestial being. However, it was impossible not to practice. Not to mention Laurel and Barbara who relied on their martial arts to survive. Even Zatanna and Zatkong knew some martial arts to some extent. Because of this, they could see the essence of the battle between Thea and the big loli. There were many female superheroes, but there were almost no women in the martial arts category. Other than Thea and Shiva, the rest of the martial artists were all men. The big loli was now a quasi-martial artist. She basically relied on a flash of inspiration to fight. If she was lucky, she could win against an opponent of the same strength. If she was unlucky, she could not win. She now felt a lot of pressure when facing the serious Thea. Batman was busy every day, and did not have much time to train her. There were differences between men and women, and the martial arts were different. The big loli could only gain some experience with Batman. Thea, on the other hand, was different. After Lady Shiva's careful guidance, her general direction was exactly the same as Cassandra's. The tricky, quick, and ruthless fighting style made the big loli exclaim in her heart. This was a real battle. The two fought for a full 15 minutes. Seeing that the big loli was tired, Thea slowed down. In the eyes of outsiders, the two ended in a tie. Seeing that the big loli wanted to say something to her, Thea hurriedly interrupted her. I set up a large illusion barrier in Building 15 on West Street. If you want to fight, you can go there. Every person who enters will be created an illusion with the same ability as themselves. You can fight with yourself and see your own shortcomings and shortcomings. This is what you need now. The big loli's eyes lit up. Fight with me? That sounds interesting. She bowed to her, picked up her clothes, and went to find the so-called Building 15. I think you're just lazy. The Valkyrie easily exposed her intentions. Thea scratched her head. She was so busy now that she really had no time to teach children. She set up a large illusion. If there was a need, they could go in and practice. She called it self-improvement. How practical. Hearing that they could be challenged, the heroines were interested. Can my magic be simulated with illusions? Zatanna asked. Yes. Thea answered happily. As long as their strength was not higher than hers, they could basically replicate an illusion 100%. With a whoosh, a few more people who loved to fight ran out. Kara also wanted to go, but he was dragged into the small dark room by Alex and brutally trained. The celebrity trio went shopping, or rather, to enjoy the enthusiasm of ordinary fans. The wedding trio teamed up to look at wedding dresses. Hearing that it was such a meaningful thing, Shadow, who was going to marry Oliver, also went with them. Chapter 746. After sleeping in and sparring with the big loli, Thea felt refreshed. Let's go shopping. Before Thea could finish, her phone rang. She looked at it casually. 2 minutes later, she showed her phone to Diana, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Look at this golden vanguard. He can't stay still. He endorsed shampoo, sportswear, and even wants to film a superhero movie. This guy is too shameless. Heroes shouldn't be like this. The definition of a hero is to protect. It's to use one's abilities to protect more people, not to gain benefits for oneself. This guy likes to be in the limelight too much. Diana was very unhappy. Thea did not mind. The other party's actions could also divert the firepower against superheroes. Overall, it was a good thing. Let's go shopping. I saw a dress that suits you last time. The sky was blue. It was close to noon, and the light was not too strong. There were not many pedestrians on the road. Without exception, they were all women. Seeing them walking hand in hand, no one disturbed them. Diana had high standards. When the two of them were shopping, it was usually Thea who made all kinds of bold suggestions. After that, she would either nod or shake her head. The color of this dress suits you, but it shows a little too much of your back. Yes, this belt suits your skin color. Diana, who was already tall, liked to wear high heels and slim-fit dresses. Unknowingly, she looked even taller. Thea's fashion sense was impeccable. With the blessing of the art god, she could look stunning without revealing her skin or a deep V-neck. Under her careful selection, Diana chose 2 pairs of boots, a pair of high heels, 2 dresses, and a belt. As one of the richest people in the world, Thea did not even have enough clothes to wear. She only chose 2 t-shirts and a pair of boots. Did you see that? Her legs are so long. They are so close. I heard that they are. I'm so envious. Did you see the news on the website? They all said that the taller woman is Wonder Woman. The 2 goddesses walked past many shops. Many shop assistants were whispering in corners that they could not see. Unfortunately, their words fell into the ears of the goddesses. Thea nudged Diana's shoulder. Your identity is about to be exposed. Haha. This was something that couldn't be helped. Their relationship was too close, and they didn't deliberately avoid it. No matter how serious their face blindness was, there were always a few people with normal eyes. It was only a matter of time before their identities were exposed. Let them be. It's a pity that my job is going to be ruined. Valkyrie revealed a rare coquettish expression. I'll take care of you. Eldest Miss patted her chest and promised. The 2 of them smiled. They both knew that this was impossible. Diana's personality was too strong. She would not stay idle. After strolling around leisurely for half an hour, a little trouble came looking for him. Dr. Quinn, this girl wants to see you. The staff member pulled a small girl over. The girl had blonde hair. She was not tall and was a little thin. She looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. She wore a blue mask and blue tights with a large 5-pointed star painted on it. From afar, it looked like the American flag was draped over her body. The clothes were just accessories. The girl's belt and cane contained a lot of energy. The 2 goddesses couldn't help but take a second look. I intercepted your communication signal. I'm also a heroine. Why didn't you invite me? The girl said a little angrily. Hey. Thea smiled playfully. Another naughty child. However, this one seemed to have a gentle temper. Even when she was angry, Her words were still organized. The other party was obviously looking for Thea. Diana stood quietly and didn't say anything. Thea pretended to ask, "Little girl, what abilities do you have? Have you done any heroic deeds?" The little girl looked like she was going for an interview. She nervously gripped her cane. I can fly. I can also control some energy." Perhaps she felt that her words weren't convincing enough. She raised her cane and shot a blast of energy at a huge rock not far away. The huge rock was shattered by the golden energy. The little girl looked at them uneasily, waiting for the result. "Your abilities are not bad." Diana was the first to confirm. Thea knew that she agreed. After all, they didn't plan to save the world. Their mission was to have fun. It didn't make a difference whether they had won or not. She thought for a moment. "Little girl, let me say this first. Superheroes aren't a game. I can see that you don't have any superpowers. It's all the power provided by the cane and belt. You're very weak. If you want to join this team, you have to accept the most basic combat training. I don't ask for much. You have to be able to protect yourself when you're unprepared. You have to rely on yourself, not your equipment. Do you understand what I mean?" The little girl nodded in confusion. Thea face-bombed. She knew that a naughty child at this age didn't know anything. She jumped out to fight criminals just because she was hot-blooded. "What's your name? I'll ask your family for their opinion first." "I." The little girl's eyes were a little evasive. "TSK, did she run out on her own again?" Thea had seen too many of such plots. "You don't want to say it? It's okay. You look like you flew all the way here. The satellites along the way should have captured you. Let me check." Thea took out her phone and searched. The little girl didn't believe that she could find out her identity so easily. She looked at her a little angrily. The rookie heroine's route was directly marked by the Quinn Corporation's satellites and the watchtower. Then, the information of the local residents was retrieved, and their facial expressions were simulated. In less than 2 minutes, the results were displayed on Thea's phone. "Courtney Whiteman?" Thea looked at the little girl with a smug expression. The other party was shocked. "She saw through me so easily? What a pity that I had prepared this costume for 2 nights. Thea looked like an experienced person. She called Courtney's stepfather according to the contact book. She talked to him for a long time. She put down the phone and said under Courtney's expectant gaze, "You're not allowed to go on missions until you complete the basic training. Think of a code name for yourself." "Starchaser. I want everyone to call me Starchaser." Thea nodded. She had accepted this quasi-hero who had brought her own rations. The deeper reason was that she wanted to train this little girl. No matter which couplet she was in, her national flag outfit was very popular. She was a natural team spokesperson just like the American team next door. "Alex, help train this little girl. She's called Starchaser." Thea opened the door of the training room and temporarily rescued the dizzy Supergirl. Alex enjoyed the pleasure of teaching. He pulled Starchaser into his small classroom without hesitation. Chapter 747. Courtney, the rebellious girl who ran away from home, had no foundation in combat. Even without her superpower equipment, she was not as good as Kara. The 2 girls were beaten to a pulp by Alex, leaving them to train in full swing. Thea clicked her tongue and continued shopping with Diana. When the sun was setting, the 2 of them bought a bunch of things. While they were packing, they saw 2 figures flashing across the sky. Hurry up. You can't beat me." The 2 girls, Supergirl and Starchaser, flashed across the sky like crazy. "He looks like they've been holding it in for too long," Diana said in amusement. Thea was also a little amused. It must have been hard on these naughty girls to train with their superpowers suppressed for an entire day. The 2 girls put down their things and went to soak in the hot spring. This was definitely a private place. She had set up a magic circle around the hot spring, and all male creatures would be bombarded by magic if they approached. Without the cover of clothes, the difference between good and bad figures could be seen at a glance. The competitive mentality between women was no exception, even among a group of righteous heroines. Most of the members of the female righteous couplet were gathered in the hot spring. They pretended to look straight ahead amidst the mist, but in fact, they were secretly observing other people's figures from the corner of their eyes and comparing them to themselves. Despising those shorter than them and despising those bigger than them, This was the silent war between women. Most of the heroines had excellent eyesight. In a space that was not too big, as long as they wanted to, they could basically see everything. In the mist, some people casually raised their hands, and some people casually shook their heads. Everyone wanted others to see their beauty under the cover of their combat uniform. Other than the married trio, the rest of the heroines were all extraordinary people. The rhythm of strength and beauty was hidden deep in their bodies. Their bodies were beautiful, and their lines were soft and full of tension. They did not have the muscles of the male heroes, and the heroine showed a calm and elegant side. When Thea and Diana came in, they caused a slight gasp of surprise. Diana was the tallest of the women. She was like a taut bow, fierce and full of offensive power after years of fighting. Thea had the best figure and a pretty face. Her eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Her status as a goddess of literature and art was not for show. She was full of artistic qualities, which was reflected in her figure. She was not fat, not thin, not tall, not short, not big, not small. Even Diana, who was also a goddess, was lacking in proportion. The two goddesses found themselves a small pool and lay in the hot spring. They seemed to be closing their eyes, but in fact they were gossiping in their telepathic channel. Barbara's waist is a little thick. Spark's eyes are green, but his body structure is the same as ours. Hey, what do you think they are saying about us? Of course it's because Goddess Thea is so sexy and charming. Eldest Miss was about to speak when she heard footsteps. She knew that another woman had entered. She quickly turned her swan-like slender neck to look at the entrance. There were many people who were doing the same thing as her. It was just that some were doing it secretly while others were doing it openly. Supergirl, Starchaser, Martian Girl, Raven and Cassandra, who had been fooling around for half a day, felt contempt the moment they entered the hot spring. They were just a few children. This was the first thought in the minds of many heroines. Raven's development had always been slow due to her Tripalace demon bloodline. Now, her body was about the same as a flat plate. Cassandra had been practicing martial arts too hard, and had been running around with her mother. Her development was also very slow. The Martian girl was very shameless. Her body was obviously average, but when she saw the other girls looking at her, she used her special ability to control the density of her body and made herself look hot. When she turned around and saw the dissatisfied gazes of her friends, she scratched her head and retracted her body. Kara was the oldest. She had a job and pocket money, so she ate without holding back. Now her body was bloated like a balloon. However, she was still not as good as Starchaser. Starchaser was 3 years younger than her, but her body was at least a cup size lower than hers. Usually, she was wrapped in tights and could not be seen. Now that she looked like this, she had developed quite well. When the group of perverted sisters saw that the half-grown children were not interested, they all turned their gazes away. Thea did not want to be surrounded by a group of people. She set up a barrier in front of her, blocking all sight and sound. The people outside could not see them, but they could see outside. The two girls stretched out their legs to compare. Your legs are still longer than mine, Thea said embarrassedly. Diana cautiously glanced outside and felt the magic flow of the soundproof barrier. Even Zatanna wouldn't be able to eavesdrop on them. She slapped away Kara's hand that was stroking her leg. That's my only strength. Thea bit her earlobe. Who said so? Your fingers are also very strong. Unlike us mage-type gods who are weak and powerless, right? After saying that, she stretched out a slender index finger and stroked Diana's red lips. Her finger and her tongue mixed together, and the two of them looked a little intoxicated. You're not thinking of playing here, are you? Diana wanted to say something, but unfortunately, Thea's finger was still in her mouth. She could only ask in the telepathic channel with a hint of hesitation in her voice. Thea pretended that she did not understand what she was saying and continued to tease her. Let's go back to the room. Diana showed a rare little girl's pleading expression, which amused Thea. She thought that she had succeeded and wanted to teleport back to the room. Unfortunately, her magic skills were far inferior to Thea's. Thea pinched her teleportation spell and looked at her with a faint smile. Thea would of course not spar in public. Diana was thin-skinned, and she was not that bold. We're just talking. I won't do anything else. As she said that, she licked Kara's delicate earlobe with her tongue. You vixen. Diana wanted to take out the true word lasso and tie the eldest miss up and down 3 times to hang her up and beat her, but she also knew that she couldn't make too much noise. Passively defending was not the Valkyrie's style. She pushed her index finger out of her mouth and moved quickly. She turned Thea's shoulders 180 degrees and tied her hands behind her back. Diana looked at her proudly. Thea's long and strong fingers entered the predetermined battlefield. The 2 goddesses' eyes were filled with lust. Their tongues were teasing each other in their mouths. Their long legs were snuggled together like 2 snakes. Why don't we have a friendly match here? As soon as this thought popped up, they immediately extinguished it. Let's go back to the room. Just as Thea was about to teleport, gunshots came from outside the block. Let go of me first. There seem to be enemies outside, she said softly. Diana did not have X-ray vision. After listening carefully for a while, she snorted with her cute nose. Don't try to trick me. They're just a few small fries. You don't have to fight with so many heroes. I'll untie you tonight. Big sister, you've become naughty. Is it really okay to play like this? But it seems quite exciting. Chapter 748. The enemies outside weren't strong, and Thea found it interesting. Since Diana wanted to play this way, she would play along. After all, she was the one who started it. With her hands tied behind her back, she couldn't wear the quilt in this position. But the god's punishment robe wasn't affected. She turned around and put on the divine robe. With her hands behind her back, she looked like an expert. Diana had a smile on her face, and her eyes were filled with pride. She had also changed into battle armor. The 2 girls removed the soundproof barrier, and the girls in the hot spring were stunned when they saw their outfits. A few of the superheroines with supervision and superhearing immediately noticed the abnormality outside. Their breasts surged, and they started to change their clothes. Zatanna and Raven used magic the fastest. They got rid of the water on their bodies and put on their clothes. The rest of the superheroines used their abilities too. Ice, fire, lightning, plants, they all got rid of the water on their bodies and put on their clothes. The normal superheroines were a little slower, but only by a little. The fastest way to change into a battle armor was the first lesson for these superheroines. Barbara and Laurel changed their outfits very quickly. Other than the water stains on their hair, they looked almost the same as usual. I thought Star City would be safer. Vixen, a black female hero from Zambia, used her necklace to see the enemies in the distance. She said with a knowing expression, "Haha, it's just a small problem. Just think of it as an entertainment for the first gathering of the Women's Justice League." Thea replied generously. She then glanced at Shadow, who was wearing a green robe and holding a bow and arrow skateboard. She whispered to Vixen, "I heard you know Oliver too. Are you with my brother too? Don't joke around. We're just good friends." Vixen denied. Thea had her reservations. It was rare to find a woman who hadn't slept with Oliver, but she didn't think too much about it. Although she didn't arrange this entertainment, she still felt that it was meaningful to gather all the superheroines to fight a monster. So she pulled Felicity, Louise, and Airs up. Those who had the ability to fly directly flew in the sky, while the rest used spells, abilities, and gliding wings. The last few who couldn't fly were all taken away by Carol Ferris of the Purple Lantern Corps. A group of people flew out of the street in a grandiose manner. All the female heroes were curious. Just how blind were the enemies that came to kill them at this time? The attackers and defenders fought fiercely, and the sound of gunfire was endless. Thea hired the Blackwater Company to protect her, and they were all female soldiers who had been on the battlefield. They were well paid, and they knew how many people were backing them, so they fought back calmly against the intruders. When Thea and the others arrived, they heard a man speaking in a low voice. "Oh, hee. Was there someone important here? I just want to go in and take a look." Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by a group of figures descending from the sky. In this day and age, there were basically no weaklings who could fly on their own. He began to size up this group of people. Thea wasn't wearing her signature quilt outfit, but a mysterious robe with a hood. This image wasn't widely known. Diana was very recognizable, and there was almost no one who didn't know her. This made the middle-aged man's eyes shrink slightly, as if he didn't expect to meet a superhero just by following the magical wave out for a stroll. He looked around and didn't seem to see Superman or Batman, which made him feel relieved. Most of the female heroes' brilliance was overshadowed by the male heroes. Even though Batwoman Barbara and the others had been famous for many years, the middle-aged man didn't attract much attention. Who is this guy? Do you know him? Thea had some guesses in her mind, but she still asked as if there was no one around. He is Ninja Masters Jr. Damien Dark. I heard that he knows some magic. White Canary Sarah Lance said in a normal tone. In the past, this guy was a strong enemy, but now there were so many female heroes here, and each of them killed him with a kick. It's really this guy. Thea looked at the fair fatty standing in the crowd. Isn't this guy the boss of the 4th season of Green Arrow? How unlucky must he be to bump into my doorstep? He has the same name as Damien? Let me deal with him. The black-bellied lowly raven took the initiative to ask for a fight. How could such a silly guy deserve to be called Damien? Let me. My energy weapon is very powerful. Starchaser raised her arms and asked for a fight as if she was answering a question in a classroom. She ran out excitedly. She thought it was going to be a big battle, but there were only 30 people below, including the boss and his minions. This was not enough to fight at all. Me too. Supergirl was a little itchy after being beaten up by Alex for the whole day. You guys are pissing me off. Damien Dark, who was on the ground, was very unhappy that they didn't take him seriously. In his opinion, other than Diana, the rest of the women were no match for his powerful magic. That was what he thought, and that was what he did. He opened his right hand abruptly, and an invisible force rushed toward the women in the sky. Seeing that he had made his move, the more than 20 fully armed mercenaries behind him also raised their weapons and aimed at the people in the sky. Who was going to stop them? Thea looked at Zatanna and then at Raven. In the end, the lowly couldn't hold it in anymore. Raven waved her hand and swatted away Damien's magic as if she was swatting away a fly. It was simple and violent. There was no technique involved. It was just a head-on clash. This kind of battle is meaningless. Whoever wants to fight can go down and have some fun. Don't kill them. After that, send the ordinary people to the Star City police station. Thea said calmly. This was just an entertainment activity. Everyone was just exercising their bodies after soaking in the hot spring. You don't have to thank me. Starchaser took the lead and rushed down. The rest of the women looked at each other. They couldn't tell if these people were here to put on a show, or if they were just unlucky. The girls giggled as they each found a random soldier to play with. Kara, remember the special training during the day. Don't use your ability. Alex grabbed Supergirl and whispered to her. Supergirl had no choice but to pretend that she was an ordinary person and fought with a mercenary. Thea saw that Diana was giving her a playful look, so she also picked a random soldier to play with. So what if her hands were tied? Thea's spiritual power wasn't hindered at all. She grabbed an unlucky guy and sealed his mouth. She lifted him upside down and threw him into the air. She caught him again and made him look like a flying man. The rest of the heroines showed off their abilities. For example, Mira, Caitlin, and Frostdora had similar abilities. There were many things that couldn't be explained clearly during the day. Now that this was a good entertainment activity, they could try out their skills. Chapter 749. The trio of Frost each pulled a random soldier to test their ability to control water and make ice. As for how they felt, sorry, as long as they didn't die it was fine. These guys broke into private property at night with weapons. They were not good people. Some were full of academic spirit, such as the trio of Frost. Some were purely for fun, such as Lightning Lady, Poison Ivy, and other villains from the original Time and Space. They made their opponents almost unable to take care of themselves. On average, each person had one or more opponents. It was really not fun. Most people stopped after defeating one person. To them, this was just an entertainment activity, similar to the end-of-year lottery. The important thing was to participate. Cassandra was very serious. Her thin figure kept turning back and forth. She only stopped when all the random soldiers on the battlefield fell to the ground. Seeing that all his subordinates were taken care of almost like a joke, Damien Dark would be too stupid if he didn't know that he had encountered a tough opponent. But he had to ask Raven Lowly if she was willing to let him run. His magic was pitiful and laughable compared to the demon princess. Thea whispered a few words to Felicity. Felicity looked at her strangely. What did she mean by keeping her hands behind her back? It was so strange. The former hacker didn't think much of it. She quickly used her phone to call a drone over. The huge camera captured all the heroines' postures. It was a group activity for the heroines. Many heroines saw the camera and hurriedly posed in what they thought was very handsome. Not knowing that he had become part of a group activity, Damien Dark was still fighting desperately. Unfortunately, his magic couldn't beat Raven Lowly, and his martial arts couldn't beat Cassandra. Damien Dark had always thought that he had reached the limit of what a human could do with his magic power that he thought was invincible. In his narrow view, Superman and Sia were just SOSO. Now that he was completely awake, his skills were of no help at all. His magic was countered, and his martial arts were beaten to a pulp. Was this world so scary? This was the only thought in his mind before he fainted. Come, everyone, let's take a group photo. The young mistress called out to the girls to form a human wall that was half a meter tall like sandbags. Then the girls stood behind the human wall and took a group photo. Some of the bandits on the ground were still conscious, but none of them dared to act rashly. At this moment, they were all obediently acting as the background for this human flesh hunt. They were extremely dedicated. The heroines were not fools. They could tell at a glance whether they were fainting or not. However, they still giggled and posed. With a click, the 29 official members and Starchaser, who had brought her own food to join in the fun, were officially frozen in the photo. Some were serious, some were funny. In short, the first collective activity of the Women's Justice League had officially come to an end. It was already late at night, and the police had already gotten off work. This group of people were all tied up and waiting to be sent to the police station in the morning. The group of heroines greeted each other and returned to their rooms to rest. In Thea and Diana's room, "Hurry up and untie me. Feels weird," Thea pleaded a little coquettishly. At this moment, Diana's face was overflowing with a smile. "Let's play a game, a role-playing game." The bandits who were acting as human flesh tools were all sent to the Star City police station at dawn. The security was too good. The police officers rarely saw any bandits, so they happily took them away. As for Damien, he was brought back to the administrative committee by Thea. Originally, she wanted to send him to the Heaven's Eye Society. However, when she thought about the high rate of escapees from the Heaven's Eye Society, she felt more at ease locking him up in her own territory. She could just lock him up in any cell. This guy was just a small fry to her. The devil statue that was the source of his magic power was directly shattered by Thea. This method of trading with the devil was obviously an old tradition of the Assassin League. It was dangerous and did not have much room for development. Thea remembered that this white fatty had planned to use a nuclear bomb to bombard the ground in Green Arrow. He had brought a group of people to hide underground. She remembered that he had planted a large piece of corn underground. The young mistress couldn't help but think, could it be that this guy had some talent in agriculture? Wasn't his talent a little too skewed? Since he was so good at farming, he should come to Nevada to develop his skills. Before he was locked up, there was a routine interrogation. It was all the usual questions about his name, gender, and occupation. She didn't expect to get something out of him. "Sir," he said that he belongs to an organization called Honeycomb. The interrogation experts asked him 3 times. He shouldn't be lying. This organization is very large and has many members. The former black bodyguard, Digger, excitedly reported to her. Thea was a little interested. Honeycomb? She picked up the interrogation record and flipped through it. Fortunately, there was no umbrella or hydra. This organization was more like a fraternity for rich people. This fat Damien was trying to instigate Sia to fight those rich people with the intention of, "I'm not having a good time, so don't you all." He didn't know that his malicious revenge had given Thea a good excuse. On this list, there happened to be a family that had recently been the most aggressive against Quinn and her daughter. She had originally planned to cause a car accident, but now she could save the trouble and just confiscate their property. The white fatty Damien insisted that the other party was an accomplice. All kinds of video evidence and all kinds of clues were collected. Thea directly brought a large group of people to the door to arrest them. In a flurry of activity, the eldest young miss had outstanding military service. 2 deputy mayors, 1 senator, and 3 prominent members of society were arrested by her. All kinds of evidence of their crimes, both true and false, were pinned on them. Since they were not clean in the first place, There were even more flaws when they framed each other. Unfortunately, the charges weren't serious. They were all corruption and fraud. It was still a little short of the treason against humanity that the mother and daughter had committed. What should she do? Thea rubbed her chin and racked her brains. Was she trying to frame him or not? Sir, there's a new discovery. The black bodyguard took out the latest confession and showed it to her. Thea glanced at it casually and hurriedly looked up. Mr. Digger, are you sure that this honeycomb organization was premeditated by aliens? We have to be responsible and have evidence. The black bodyguard took out an evidence bag. This was found in the basement of one of the houses. The other party was very vigilant. The remnants of the device after it self-destructed are all here. Professor Stein said that this metal is definitely not from Earth. Taking the evidence bag, Thea looked at it. The silver-white metal, even if there were remnants of the explosion on it, did not seem to be from Earth. She had thought that it was a small matter, but now it seemed to be getting bigger. She immediately instructed. They must have a way to contact them. Send elite agents to continue digging and investigating. Report to me at any time. The evidence provided by the administrative committee was very conclusive. It turned out that there was indeed a group of aliens lurking among human beings for a long time, and they had infiltrated the upper echelons of society. In the face of the crisis, the group of people who were very noisy immediately shrank back. The originally lively storm calmed down instantly. The expected establishment of the International Justice League was delayed for 3 months with the excuse that the venue was not well coordinated. Thea learned from the 2 female generals, Lai Hua and Han Bing, that the Golden Vanguard was very unhappy. On the other hand, Diana finally quit her job at the Hepburn Foundation. It was unknown whether it was because she was back on track or because of her reputation. The Louvre Museum expressed great enthusiasm for Wonder Woman's new job, and the curator personally invited her. Diana was also interested in historical relics. After asking for Thea's opinion, she flew straight to France to work. Chapter 750. Life seemed to be back on track. On Monday, Thea saw the busy figure of her secretary, Miss Maisie, outside her office. Mr. Luther doesn't need pity. He didn't need it then, and he still doesn't need it now. Miss Maisie's expression was very normal, as if she was talking about someone unrelated to her. Do you mind talking to me? Miss Maisie thought about it and decided to speak. Mr. Luther had a big fight with his sister and left the Luther group alone. I was waiting for him on the path he had to pass by and was ready to go with him, but he rejected me without hesitation. Do you love him? It shouldn't be love. I admired him, but it's all in the past now. Miss Maisie's expression quickly changed into a professional smile. She handed her a stack of documents waiting to be signed, then walked out with a normal expression. Thea didn't have a good way to explain it. Miss Maisie was actually a very passive person in life. She liked to maintain a way of life for a long time, and she still wanted it to be the way it was 10 years ago. Her feelings for Luther were more of a habit. Miss Maisie's loyalty was unquestionable. As for sending her back to find out about her, with Luther's pride, he wouldn't do such a thing. She sighed and began to focus on her work. 5 days later, Thea came to the Alien Management Committee. Not long after she entered, the former bodyguard, Digger, hurriedly brought her a document. This is the information we just intercepted. This woman killed one of our elite agents. Thea was still very serious when she was working. She picked up the document and quickly flipped through it. The prostitute in the bar next to the New Orleans military base. Registered as Priscilla? Cut our agent into pieces? Judging from the wound, she's an alien? Yes, Agent Evans found her very suspicious. Her identity was vague, so he went to investigate with his partner, Fana. After this woman revealed her flaws, she killed and pretended to be Agent Evans. She read a lot of information from the management committee from Agent Fana's mind. The black man's aura was dignified. The change in the situation seemed to have brought him back to the military camp. His efforts were very valuable, and he liked this kind of life very much. A female alien who can transform and read minds. Thea thought for a moment. Things were getting more and more out of a group activity of the couplet, and there were more and more people involved. Aliens were definitely within the scope of the administrative committee's business, so she decided to take on this mission herself. Where is Agent Fangna? In the polygraph room. Let's go and take a look. Thea soon saw Agent Fana. She remembered this woman. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a hot body. She was one of the few beauties in the Alien Administrative Committee. She had been transferred here because she had kicked her superior's indescribable thing in the FBI. After repeated questioning, the polygraph staff finally verified Agent Fana's testimony. Thea waited for the polygraph technician to leave before she asked, "Agent Fana, please repeat what happened." It could be seen that the female agent had been asked many times, and she was a little annoyed. However, she did not dare to argue with Thea. She lit a cigarette and recounted her experience. It was similar to what was described in the report. She and her partner Evans went to investigate a stripper. Perhaps Evans's perverted look was more obvious, so she slammed the door in anger and left. What happened after that was bizarre. Evans found her an hour later, and the two had a friendly match. When she went to the bathroom, she received a call from her superior, who told her that her partner had been dead for 2 hours. If this was a horror movie world, Agent Fana would have been dead. Fortunately, this was not a horror movie. She realized that something was wrong. When she returned to the bedroom with her gun, Evans, who had a friendly match with her, was long gone. The Administrative Committee's agents also analyzed that the alien had the ability to transform. Thea clicked her tongue in wonder as she listened to her story while flipping through the lie detector personnel records. This alien's original body should be female, but she could actually transform into a man to play a friendly match. Besides, her own subordinates were also very strange. In order to find clues, the polygraph staff repeatedly asked Agent Fana what position she had used, how long it had been, and how long she had screamed. After rigorous training, Agent Fana's memory was also very good. She recalled the entire friendly match second by second, including what she had been doing at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and what she had been doing at 5 minutes and 31 seconds. In the end, the time difference was less than 10 seconds. From the results of the polygraph, they had only done one thing and nothing else. "I believe you're telling the truth." Thea was very sure. It was very difficult to lie in front of her. Ordinary people could not do it at all. Even the slightest soul fluctuation would attract her attention. It was too difficult to lie in front of the divine position of the soul. "Sir, I applied to join the follow-up manhunt. Even if Evans is a scumbag, I want to avenge him." "Okay." Thea turned to ask the black man, "How's the preparation for the manhunt going? We can leave at any time. We need your authorization and operation code." "Okay, bring Agent Fana and send out 5 single mechas with anti-mind reading jammers. We'll leave in 30 minutes. Since that bar is called Voodoo Bar, let's give this alien the code name Voodoo." Thea quickly made the decision and ordered the black man and Fana to go and prepare. She stayed where she was and looked through the records. Even if this alien's strength was nothing to her, she would not underestimate it. In less than 20 minutes, the 5 single mechas, including the black man and Agent Fana, were ready to go. This kind of mass-produced mecha was definitely not as advanced as Thea's self-made ones, but it was still much stronger than the kinetic skeleton used to attack the Cold Flame Vatican. It was equipped with energy weapons, could fly, and could fight in close range. It was the symbol of the elites in the management committee. Manhunts could be solved with a compass or a divination spell. But Thea did not want to appear too mysterious in front of her subordinates. After all, her title was Dr. Quinn, not Immortal Quinn. Her subordinates worked together. In modern society, even if she had the ability to transform at will, they could still track her down with some special technology. "Sir, the target appeared in a Heaven's Eye Society base in Mississippi." The Heaven's Eye Society replied that a lot of information was stolen. Just as they were about to leave, an agent came in and reported. "Damn it." The black man was furious, but Thea did not care. Could they defeat the enemy just because they obtained information? What a stupid idea. Even if there was a mastermind behind this alien who liked both men and women, it could not be that strong. She committed the crime in New Orleans and ran to Mississippi in the blink of an eye. She probably read the location of the Heaven's Eye Society's base in Agent Fana's brain. "We are not affected by the Heaven's Eye Society. We can remodel and start the manhunt again." By the way, what information did she steal? Thea asked the informant at the end. Chapter 751. Her subordinate looked at her nervously. She copied all the information about the Justice League. Thea's face froze. She thought they were targeting humans, but she didn't expect them to be targeting the Justice League. Just as she was wondering if she should capture the target directly, her subordinate reported the results of his calculations. The direction she's heading is Alabama. Thea waved her hand. Let's go. Wearing a casual suit, she led the way and flew out briskly. Her subordinates didn't dare to delay, and they all activated their armor and chased after her. In less than 30 minutes, they hovered outside a garage. Heat tracking, the target is still inside. But their heat readings are different from humans. Attack, none of the 4 people inside are from Earth. Thea waved her hand and signaled for her subordinates to attack. She was the boss, and it wasn't her turn to deal with these small problems. After absorbing a lot of alien technology, the management committee's weapons had been upgraded. The 5 of them raised their hands together, and more than 10 sound impact bombs were fired. The garage that stood alone on the side of the road was blown up into the sky, and 4 figures flew out from it. There was a fat man with a big head and big ears. Beside him were 2 expressionless women. The 3 of them were standing together in a group. Another woman stood 5 meters away. She had flaxen hair and a slightly dark complexion. She looked like a Latina. These people looked like they were from Earth, right? Her subordinates hesitated. I'll take responsibility if anything happens. They're not from Earth or not completely. Take them all down. There were so many races in the universe, and her eyes weren't supercomputers. Thea could see that their body structure was different from that of Earth's, and that was enough. Military orders were like mountains, and this saying was effective at any time. The black man took the lead and rushed out. He felt that the fat man seemed to be very powerful. Agent Fina went to kill the target, the woman codenamed Voodoo. The remaining 3 began to attack the 2 women who seemed to be trembling. Most agents were cold-blooded and had undergone cruel training. Unlike superheroes, they did not care much about the lives of ordinary people. With Thea's guarantee, the 5 of them were ruthless without exception. The black man activated the switch on his armor, and with a low roar, a roaring chainsaw was pulled out. The chainsaw cut at an extremely fast speed, and with an indomitable momentum, it slashed towards the fat man. The remaining 4 also showed off their skills. Some were good with guns, some were good with fists and kicks. The individual armor could completely magnify their strengths, and unleash these strengths on the enemy 10 times, or even 100 times. The fat man did not expect the agents to be so ruthless as soon as they arrived. He transformed in a hurry, his skin turning dark brown, and black hair growing all over his body. His eyes became extremely small, flashing with a ferocious red light. His jawbone protruded forward and opened at a 90-degree angle. Among his green fangs was a tongue full of barbs. The other 2 trembling girls also transformed at the same time. Their heads squeezed and stretched into 2 octopus heads, and the hair behind their heads turned into slippery tentacles. Their skin turned light blue, and their arms, thighs, and waists were full of barbs. Their index and middle fingers, ring and little fingers were glued together. Their originally delicate fingers now looked like the claws of some kind of animal. TSK, how disgusting. Miss Fina was very glad that she did not participate. This was clearly not a characteristic of a normal species. God knows what kind of messy genes were added to this. The original target, Voodoo, was much more normal. Of course, this was relatively normal. A crocodile-like skin covered her entire body. She had huge claws and a lizard-like mouth. If she were to perform a striptease with this appearance, she believed that no matter how thirsty the New Orleans soldiers were, they would not support her. A bright green light flashed across her eyes. Thea was a little surprised. Hi Hal. Why are you here? I don't remember informing the Alliance. I flew by not far away. The light ring said that there was a high energy reaction here, so I came over to take a look. Who are these people? Looks like they are based on the human body, mixed with extraterrestrial and animal genes. As for what kind of extraterrestrial genes they are, you can use the green light to check. War's database is much richer than the yellow light. Hal raised the ring and scanned the 4 of them. The light ring quickly gave the answer. They are the biochemical experiment subjects of the Dino people. Thea thought for a moment. I'm afraid they are not just experimental subjects. They are here with a mission. That lizard-like woman has just infiltrated the secret base of the Heaven's Eye Society. She has stolen information about the Justice League. Hal Jordan, who was passing by, also became serious. He did not hide the establishment of the Justice League. However, to be so anxious to obtain information, it seemed like it was premeditated and organized. Aren't you going to take action? Hal could not stand it anymore. My old injury has not healed yet. Oh right, send me a copy of the information about the Dino people. Afraid of provoking Hal, Thea did not use the yellow light ring. She took out the green light ring and copied a copy of the information. It included the language, ethnic characteristics and social structure of the Dino people. Leaving Thea alone to study the information, Hal went down to capture the enemy. With his help, the agents who had the upper hand became even more ferocious. The two octopus women were the first to be defeated. They were injected with large amounts of sedatives and put on energy suppression bracelets. The foreign genes gradually disappeared, revealing their original appearance. The fat man who looked like a black bear took some effort. One of his arms had been chopped off by the black man Digger. In a fit of anger, he was ready to self-destruct. Hal Jordan immediately used the green light ring to wrap him up, and only released him when he exploded into powder. The last voodoo woman was surprisingly powerful. Not only did she use the biological technology of the Dino people, she also mixed the steps of a stripper into her attacks with her sharp teeth and claws. Her body had a strong sense of rhythm. She moved left and right, causing the few of them to run in circles. In the end, the impatient Thea used the body immobilization spell to take her down. Should we take her back to the Alliance or? Hal asked tentatively. Thea was too lazy now. If it was in the past, they could just drag her away if they liked her. She could not be bothered. However, this person involved aliens. Since she was the chairman of the administrative committee, she did not care if it was inappropriate. This is the work of the administrative committee. If you want to participate in the interrogation, you can come and watch. If you want a written report, I can get my assistant to choose the parts that are not confidential and print a copy for you. She replied formally. All right. I'm not interested. You can deal with it yourself. Hal Jordan was also very busy. Earth was not the only planet in Sector 2814. It was not just the solar system. There were too many things that he had to take care of. After informing Thea, he hurriedly flew away. The agents took down the enemy without any casualties. They cleared the scene of various explosive fragments and brought the 3 captives away. The black bear man who had self-destructed also collected some cell information for later analysis. Chapter 752. Take them all back. Feed each of them 2 kilograms of true water, and interrogate them about who they are going to hand over the information to. Who is the contact person? The agents were very obedient, but the results were not very effective. Thea waited until the evening of the same day before they tiredly produced the preliminary results of the interrogation. An agent wearing thick glasses was so nervous facing Thea that it took him 3 minutes to finish stuttering. What? You said they have a spaceship on the far side of the moon? Thea stood up from the chair, and her cold eyes made the agent nervous again. He only had the strength to nod. Things were serious. There was an alien spaceship so close to the Earth, and no one had found it? It was incredible. Thea and Diana often went to other planets to play, and Green Lantern and Superman flew out from time to time. Plus there were the 2 bugs, Batman and Luthor. How could so many people not find it? Batman had a huge experimental base on the far side of the moon. Thea took the report and calculated the location of the coordinates. She really had not paid attention to this coordinate. Seal all the information and list it as top secret. The woman whose real name is Priscilla and code name is Voodoo continue to be detained. Wait for me to go to the scene. After she finished speaking, she flew into the sky under the admiring eyes of the agents. In a few minutes she flew to the far side of the moon. There were densely packed craters, and there were no signs of microbes at all. It was empty and barren. This was a land of death. No matter how she looked, she did not see anything unusual. Were those investigators trying to trick me? This idea was quickly denied. They did not dare. Did that woman say it casually? Thea felt that the thread of fate above her head was swaying slightly. Something must be going on here. She searched several times with her mental power and supervision, but still found nothing. The universe was full of strange things. The other party must have used some advanced technology to hide the spaceship. Thea turned around and went to find Batman. He was better at technology than she was. You mean there is an alien spaceship hidden on the far side of the moon? They have been monitoring Earth? Even the usually calm Master Bat was shocked by this news. Thea nodded. If I'm not wrong, your every move has been under the enemy's surveillance. Batman also realized that the situation was tricky. His base on the dark side of the moon had been moved away, but he still left a lot of observational equipment. He mobilized all of them to analyze and calculate. All of this was caused by that white fatty that day? Catwoman Barbara rushed over when she heard the news. Only after a bunch of women asked her did she find out that the origin of the matter was related to her. Thea didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she explained. The fatty white you guys are talking about isn't specially arranged to liven up the show. He really came here himself. As for why so many things happened after that, it could only be explained by the fact that the Female Righteous Alliance had a lot of luck. Barbara, Catwoman, Batwoman, the Huntress, and the big lowly Cassandra looked at each other in bewilderment. They had thought that it would be a party for fun, but they had dug out such a huge hidden danger. I have to participate again next time. A bunch of women were talking, and the noise was so loud that even Thea couldn't stand it. On the other hand, Master Bat was expressionless and sat very calmly. But when she looked carefully, she found that the mute switch on Batman's helmet had already been turned on. Is this why you wear a mask in your own home? Thea felt that she had guessed the truth. After half an hour, Batman pointed at the screen. Your judgment is correct. Here, here, and here. These 3 points don't match the calculation results. The metal reaction here is 31 times greater than the average on the moon's surface, but the sonar detection didn't find any abnormalities here. Find the enemy and defeat the enemy. This was the way superheroes did things. Thea wanted to go and investigate herself, but Batman refused. He had to see who was secretly observing him. The heroines of the Bat team were also very interested. According to Barbara, this mission had already been added to their list of missions, so they should continue to do it. In the end, the third-generation Robin, Tim Drake, and Damian also joined the expedition plan, and there was a black guy with them. Batman introduced him to Thea. This is Lucas Fox, the son of Old Fox. His code name is Batwing. The black guy was wearing a set of bright silver high-tech armor. He was the only person in the Bat team who wore armor. Thea's eyelids twitched a few times. You must have found that there were too many women in the team, so you added a newcomer. And this guy's armor is a bit like the upgraded version of the management